The name of your enterprise was,
Charlie Mike Enterprises.
so that's the name of the business that put on active shooter training.
Yes, sir.
And is that the same for Alert? Is the name of the company that puts on active shooter training?
That is their name, yes.
But they're associated with the Texas State University.
I'm sorry, sir, please say it again.
Are they associated with Texas State University?
Yes, they are, sir, as far as I know.
And you just looked at State's Exhibits 916 through 920, is that correct? Just before the lunch break.
Yes, sir.
The State offers Exhibits 916 through 920.
That's fine, no objection, Judge.
They're admitted.
Showing you State's Exhibit 916. Can you tell us, explain to us what this depicts and who it depicts?
This appears to be Officer Gonzalez. We are doing, if I'm seeing this correctly, sir, this is usually the first day, first few minutes of training. We're learning to walk, move, and shoot.
And what does walk, move, and shoot mean?
Well, from a stable firing position, affectionately it's known as the Groucho. Your weapon is up, all right, shoulders, elbows are tucked in, and you're not walking straight up, you're not walking super bent knee either. It's a nice, steady firing platform. If you walk and shoot standing up, your weapon's going to be doing this, or possibly even this. All right, so this particular way to walk, that's what that teaches.
And State's Exhibit 917.
Same drill, sir, or it may be another part of a drill that I can't really tell. Looks like the background is fairly dark, so it may be after hours.
And on State's Exhibit 916, it was Mr. Gonzalez was in short sleeves, and in this example, there is at least one sleeve covered. Is that correct?
Appears to be so, yes.
Does that indicate it's a different drill?
Well, its clothing doesn't really indicate it, sir. It's just what is going on in that particular drill. But it is a different picture and a different drill, yes.
Okay. State's Exhibit 918. Is this also Adrian Gonzalez?
Yes, sir, it appears to be so.
And what is this drill?
This drill, we're at a football stadium, ladies and gentlemen, and teaching the guys how to take down an active shooter, like at a high school football game. In this case, I can't really tell how high up the assailant is. Sometimes we put them way up at the top, in the middle of the bleachers. Either way, it teaches the officer how to move up steps without falling on his face. You can see his, it appears to be his left hand slightly touching the guardrail. That doesn't make contact again, so you know that your footing is sure.
And State's Exhibit 919.
Okay, those are the false panels. You can see the walls. In this case, these walls are like about 7 feet tall. This is known as the heavy head. You can see the two officers. They actually would be moving down a hallway. All right, you can see the officer, just barely make out the officer in the rear. That is rear security. He checks back as we're moving, as we're progressing. Now, a couple schools of thought. You're either marching to the sound of gunfire, like we talked about earlier, right? Okay, or you know what room he's in, and you're moving toward that particular room. In this case, Officer Gonzalez is checking the hallway, a little bit back and forth, and his wingman in this case, is covering deep into the hallway.
So this is if you have multiple officers responding at the same time.
If you're lucky and you have them, yes, sir.
And State's Exhibit 920, is this also Officer Gonzalez?
It appears to be so, yes, sir.
And when I say Officer Gonzalez, are we speaking about the same Adrian Gonzalez who's at the far end of the table?
Yes, sir, we are.
And when was this course taken?
If I recall right, April 2018. I can check my notes again if you wish me to.
Pass the witness.
Mr. Whitskool, my name is Nico LaHood.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
one of the lawyers that represents Mr. Gonzalez. We've never met before, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Have you testified before? Have
In
you
what-
testified before?
In what manner, sir? Here or,
No, not in this trial. In
well,
any
as a
trial.
police officer, yes, sir.
Yeah. Have you ever testified as an expert before?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is the first time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you understand cross-examination. I'm going to ask you questions. If you don't understand my question, then please ask me to repeat it, okay?
I understand, sir.
Okay. So you gave us some of your experience. You served 3 years in SWAT with the Dallas PD,
Yes, sir.
and then you served our country in the Marines.
In the Marine Corps,
And
yes.
thank you for your service, by the way. And so you did, I think you said you used kind of your experience in embassy sweeping
Embassy
to
clearing.
but you were sweeping a building. I'm sorry, I'm using a term of art, right?
Understood.
So embassy clearing to formulate this curriculum,
Yes, sir.
right? And I think you alluded to it on direct examination. Your curriculum is, in your opinion, a proper way to handle active shooting or some type of involvement tactics with these officers that you're training, correct?
It is, sir.
And you said it on direct that other experts may have different opinions and different curriculums.
That is correct.
Your curriculum is just one way of doing it.
One of perhaps many.
Perhaps, yes, one of many ways of doing it, correct? And so one of many. And so I want to talk about that because you're testifying that Mr. Gonzalez took one of your courses, correct?
He took multiple courses from me. Active shooter was just one of them.
And you say multiple courses, as in two?
He took basic SWAT, advanced SWAT, hostage rescue, active shooter.
Okay, so 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay, are they all 40 hours?
No, sir. All the hostage rescues were 60 plus.
60 plus on hostage rescue, okay.
Yes, sir.
But on active shooter, it's a 40-hour course?
It's only 40 hours.
Okay. And you say for only 40 hours in all fairness, because have you heard the term of the 10,000 hour rule to be an expert in anything?
Yes, sir. We have another saying, 5 minutes to dress like one, 5 years to be one.
That's right, okay. Say that again, because I might use it later. But
5 minutes to dress like one, 5 years to be one.
fair enough. 5 minutes to look like one, dress like one, but 5 years to be one. And so that kind of coincides with this 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yes, sir.
Give or take. And so you use some phrases and they're general terms, concepts of you can't sit around and wait when there's an active shooter, correct?
Correct.
We have to stop the killing, right? And I want to talk about that because there's also another concept of we cannot use reckless abandonment either.
I'm sorry, yes.
Right, it's okay, take your time. Because if an officer uses reckless abandonment, no one is protected by that type of behavior from an officer.
It does no good to get yourself killed while you're trying to stop the killing, sir.
And you've heard the term, and I don't mean to sound crude, but a dead cop is no good to anybody.
That is correct.
Right. And so if an officer is not using, as I think your term, is not using tactically, is not moving tactically, then obviously that officer is not going to be as beneficial to the circumstance.
That would be correct.
And you also stated on direct examination that we are trained to never operate alone.
You start learning that in the academy.
Right. And that's an overarching theme in law enforcement that obviously it's safer to not work alone and to have backup. I think you used the term wingman.
Yes.
Right? Is that correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
It's okay. And so when we talk about, you can't sit around and wait and you have to stop the killing, those are, if we're using an analogy, those are 30,000 foot concepts, but then we have to drill down to how do we accomplish that,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Because if I told you, if I was your football coach and I told you, may I call you Mike in my example?
Yes, sir,
Because
please.
if I'm your coach, I'm going to call you Mike, not Mr. Whitskool. Mr. Whitskool. Mike, go win the game. Your response would be, all right, coach, how? Right? There needs to be a how.
I'm sorry, sir. With my coaches, it would have been yes, sir, and I move out. But I do understand and agree with what you are Thank you.
You're the exception to the rule. Okay, so, but all I'm saying is in normal people's minds, it would be a coach how, right? And so when we look at some of these trainings, the how is really just tactics. It's tactics combined with mindset. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir, I would think so.
Because if someone tells you to stop the killing, how? How do you stop the killing?
Okay, sir, I've got to close with, I've got to maneuver up and neutralize whatever's causing the killing.
Okay, so when you say you close up, that depends on the circumstance, right? A lot of people get frustrated with lawyers when they ask them questions and the lawyer's answer is, well, it depends. Depends on your circumstance, it depends on the law, it really depends on fact-specific scenarios. So it depends matters in tactics as well. Would you agree with that?
Circumstances, yeah,
Right?
Yes.
And you can't train for every circumstance.
that would be impossible.
It would be impossible. And so what you can do is create an environment of training where you create a mindset and you give them some set of skills to hopefully apply in a circumstance, right?
Correct.
You know the difference between training and conditioning? And I'll define it better for you.
Well, define it,
I don't
please.
mean physical conditioning. You can train for something and then you can be conditioned in what you train for. Example, I box, I do martial arts, and so someone can train how to punch, but everyone looks good on the heavy bag and the mitts, but then you get into sparring and we test your skills. Does that make sense?
I follow.
Okay, and so it's called stress inoculation. Have you heard of that term?
I have.
Will you please explain to the jury what stress inoculation is?
Okay, in my opinion,
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
what
In
I
your
have
opinion.
understood
Yes,
to
sir.
be, it is when you're under stress or there is, okay, I'm gonna have to use law enforcement, someone is shooting at you, all right? You're under great stress. We talked about fight or flight a little bit earlier. Your heart goes from normal beat up to 200 beats, about that fast, all right? When you train correctly, you train hard, inoculation, if you will, all right? It is what I talked about earlier, muscle memory. Now, muscles do not have memory, all right? It's part of your brain, all right? And what it does is you do something so much and so often, or respond so much and so often. It's like this young lady typing. She can look away and she's typing. She's done it so much and so often, and I need to, dare I say, under stress here in the courtroom.
When I'm talking, it's under stress. Yes, sir.
Yo, I'm following you. All right.
So my point is, do you think she's probably trained more than 40 hours to do what she's doing at her level?
Well, no doubt.
No doubt. And so an example of stress, I have permission to stand from the judge previously. So a stress inoculation would be a difference between if I were to shoot at a target and you're showing me proper hand grip, high on the tang, this part is the tang or the beaver tail, right? I'm gripping properly. We'll talk about hand grip in a second. I'm shooting, pop, pop, and I'm putting off rounds. 2 rounds within 10 seconds is a pretty easy shot, right? 2 rounds
sir.
in 10
Yes, sir.
seconds. I mean,
Yes, sir.
that's
Yes,
easy,
sir.
right? Anybody. Now, stress inoculation would be if I holstered my weapon, and you remember what horses are in basketball where you run up and down the court?
I never played basketball,
Okay, well,
sir.
you know, if you had me sprint,
Sir, I'm following you. Go
okay.
ahead.
Let's say you had stress inoculation example would be I'm holstered, I'm in my uniform with my vest and my boots, and I'm running up and down 3 times. I come back to the same, as I'm coming up, I'm drawing my weapon, and then I'm
You're engaging
and
the
now I'm
target.
engaging, but I have this stress
Yes.
response because I'm breathing heavy because I just put myself through some stress physically, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's an example of stress inoculation, and that matters. Because then you're not only training your body, but you're also training your mind, your focus, your attention, right?
Correct.
You're also trying to prepare the officer for tunnel vision, because that's just normal under a stressful situation. Officers that normally, like right now, Jason used this example with another witness. Right now, I can see Mr. Turner, I can see his investigators, I definitely see all the jurors, and the bailiff and the judge. I'm not focused on them, I'm focused on you, but under stress, my focus comes like this, and if you're my threat, I'm just focused on you, and I won't see all these other things.
Yes, sir. What you're describing is affectionately known as tunnel vision.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I was talking about. And they've heard about tunnel vision. There's also auditory exclusion, where I'm listening for things, but under stress, I won't hear normal things, and I exclude certain things that I don't think are relevant to my mind, essentially.
Essentially.
Okay, there's perception distortion. Under stress, what I perceive is happening may not really be what's happening, right? Is that correct?
Say that again, sir.
Perception distortion. Stress can make you distort what you think you're being perceived. And that's why officers train under stress, so they can make the right decisions.
That is correct.
Okay. And there's also time distortion. Under stress, something that took 5 minutes may seem like 3 seconds to me, or 5 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. These are just general concepts, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when someone is coming into a course, is it fair to say that you make an assessment of the people before they go into your course? Muzzle discipline.
That is what, sir,
Yes, sir.
the first day,
Yes,
that
sir.
slide that you showed just a moment ago, all right, and I talked about doing the Groucho. That is what that is for, learning to move and shoot. The stress is in the class already. I'm not standing there yelling and screaming at officers. We don't need to do that,
Sure.
all right?
But you're making an assessment of the officers because you're going to be working, even though you're just using these not real weapons, right?
They're soft weapons.
They're soft weapons. But still, you fight like you train. You've heard that term, right?
That is correct.
And so, and you're trying to do muscle memory and condition yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at muzzle control. Can I sweep you, Greg? No. Okay. So if you're going to see if officers are doing this kind of stuff, or if they're not controlling, having discipline of the muzzle, whether it's a rifle, a long rifle, or a handgun, you're assessing them. You're assessing their grip, how they're holding. You're assessing whether their hand is a combat grip. A lot of people, nobody shoots like this anymore, right? The teacup and saucer.
I can't see what
Well,
you're
I know.
doing,
I don't
sir.
like to even point a fake gun at people. So it's like this. No one does this anymore, right?
No, they shouldn't.
And remember, people used to do the Weaver in the old days.
Weaver and the isosceles.
And
yes.
now it's more isosceles where you're squared up,
Yes, sir.
right? And so you're assessing all those things on people before you start this course, because you're going to take them further into tactics, right?
That is correct.
And so that's what we saw on State's Exhibit. One of the State's Exhibits. I think you were saying, or maybe State's Exhibit 16 or 17, that you might have been assessing them.
Here,
Yes,
all
sir.
right, what you cannot see in this picture is, as a rule, hard rule, I always had an instructor walking around looking at his or her position, all right? In this picture, you know what, this might have been in the theater because it's dark
Yes, sir.
behind him, all right? My instructors and I are roving. We're watching everybody make entry and how they're moving.
And instructor to student ratio matters as well.
Critical.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And matter of fact, and please don't take this as a personal attack. You noticed something about your own training. You noticed somebody without glasses.
I saw that,
you picked
and
it
one of
out.
my instructors should have picked that up right away.
So take it easy on them. But that's something that you would have, if you would have seen that, then you would have said, "Oh, that definitely is not acceptable."
Ladies and gentlemen, I probably would have hit the ceiling.
Right. Give me 1 second, sir.
Please.
And so you testified earlier that you have hundreds of pictures of your students.
I had hundreds of pictures, yes, sir.
Right. And the pictures that we see here, and we're going to get into the training in a second, but the pictures we see here, every one of these pictures, what weapon system is Mr. Gonzalez using?
M4, that's an airsoft M4. Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, a BB gun with it's magazine fed, spring loaded. The gun itself is battery operated.
But what is it simulating? It's
An M4.
An M4, or similar to people that don't know, maybe kind of like an AR-15.
Essentially the same weapon, sir.
Right. And so none of these pictures have Mr. Gonzalez operating a handgun.
We tried very hard. We had airsoft handguns.
Yes, sir.
And to transition, the hardest thing to teach is with the rifles. They should be experts in their handguns, as it already is.
You said transition. So what you mean by transition is that if somebody has a rifle and then for whatever reason, this gets jammed, and we've heard testimony that can happen, right? Weapons can jam, and you're taught with a handgun to tap and rack it and try to get it back into work, into service. If this jams or you run out of rounds, you may have to discard that and go to your secondary weapon.
You just drop it and go to your handgun.
Right.
Conversely, if your handgun drops and you've got an AR, you transition to that.
Yes, sir. But in these pictures we've seen, your students are training with a weapon system like this, with an AR-15 or an M4.
Yes, sir, because that is the hardest one to train on.
I understand, but that's the one you recommend somebody handling a school shooting or an active shooter. You prefer a weapon like this, correct?
I would prefer it.
And so, right, you have to do what you have to do. But I'm just saying, if you had a choice, if we had an AR-15 here and a Glock or your weapon, your pistol of choice, and I asked you which one would you prefer in a gunfight, which one would you pick?
The AR.
Without hesitation, right?
Yeah.
And so all of the courses are dealing, they're training with the AR-15. I understand the reasoning because it's harder to train with, but that's what these courses are entailing. They entail using an AR-15 or an M4 as a primary weapon.
Essentially correct, however, so there is a however with this.
Okay, I don't mind.
I should not have to train people on their duty handgun.
I understand.
All right? Now,
You're assuming they're coming in with some basics.
yeah, but we do use, and forgive me, I don't know if we used it in Adrian's class.
Sure.
We do have airsoft handguns that we make them go back and forth. I don't know, I'm sorry, I've slept since then. I don't know if we did that in his class.
And even though you can't use live rounds, well, you could use live rounds if you had a shoot house, correct? An alert has a shoot house.
They do, my personal opinion on actual shoot houses, they are extremely dangerous and people have been injured.
And then you said your personal opinion, correct? Because other people have different opinions.
They love them.
Right. But just as an example, a shoot house is an actual house, and there's places where the supervisors can observe from above, and they're watching teams actually move and breach, and we'll talk about a center-fed room versus a corner-fed room, and transitioning to their weapons and slicing the pie and doing all kinds of tactics with live rounds.
Yes, sir.
Not against another human being, against targets, but they're using live rounds so they can, the loudness inside of a building is different, right?
Mhm.
You understand there's echoing
Yes.
and can distract somebody to try to figure out where that shooting is coming from. Is that a fair statement?
It can be, yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm not criticizing your curriculum, I'm just saying that your curriculum didn't involve that.
No, sir, mainly because we were a mobile training team,
Yes, sir.
and I can't carry a shoot house with me. However, there were places, Asheville, North Carolina, that I didn't do this as Charlie Mike, I did this when I was teaching with Texas A&M, that they had a really nice shoot house. Down at Texas A&M, they had, at the time, a nice shoot house.
Yes, sir.
All right, so yes, but with Charlie Mike Enterprises, as a rule, no.
I understand, because you can't take a mobile shoot house with you, it has to be set. But also, and again, this is not a criticism, it's just a reality, you didn't have furniture in your curriculum to
Actually, what we do, sir, is we fill the room with boxes, and that
Okay.
represents, it's things, anything, it doesn't have to be furniture, anything that an officer can trip over or bang into. All right, we set these boxes up in the room, and there's a lot of them, and if you touch it, it's a do-over. We escalated up to that level, sir.
Would you agree that me running into a box right here is different than if I'm moving quickly and I take this corner and I peel off wrong and I catch this corner? It'd be different if I hit this big table versus a box.
It's gonna hurt.
Right, it's gonna hurt. And so that kind of stress, all I'm saying is, again, because your curriculum is mobile, and I understand completely, you just didn't have the luxury of having furniture as well.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, and there is something called as marking cartridges, right? You've heard of marking cartridges?
You mean like sim rounds?
Yes, sir. SEM is
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
I know
marking
what they are.
cartridges is the general term. You have FX and you have SEM rounds. They're the brands. Is
There
that
are
fair
different ones, ACT and several.
Right.
Go ahead.
And so marking, will you explain to the jury what marking cartridges are?
Well, if I understand what you're talking about, it's almost like a paintball round that marks where you hit on a target. You guys have seen paintball, I'm assuming?
Yes, they have.
All right, yeah, splat of paint, you know where you're hitting, you know where you're aiming is the goal in this.
And so a lot of people can use these marking cartridges, or we'll call them SEM rounds, even though that's the brand, marking cartridges, because then you can actually do live training. And like a paint round, if I'm shooting or if I'm using, and you can see who's actually hitting who, and they hurt,
Yeah,
right? They leave a little bit of mark, and they make some noise. It's not like a discharge of a projectile, but they make some noise as well.
Yes, sir.
So it helps inoculate to maybe closer, it's a little bit closer to maybe a real situation. Would you agree with that?
Okay, yes, I do, sir, but please understand, airsoft can make a report, albeit not loud.
Yes, sir.
All right, they do have marking, what you would call marking BBs. We don't often use them because we found they fouled our weapons too much.
Yes, sir.
But there were times, especially in hostage rescue training, that we would use those.
And then also in the curriculum, it's impossible in a mobile class like yours, although effective, to do breaching of a door.
When doors were available, a lot of times the sponsoring agency would furnish the doors. The college did not. They didn't have anything that we could use.
But you wouldn't have a frame like that jury room behind you. I mean, so there's a difference between breaching, if this is the room, an inward swinging door, and then an outward swinging door, right? I mean, that's a big difference when you're trying to breach.
That is correct.
And with an outward swinging door, there's a lot of things to negotiate, meaning you need a tool to get into it.
Yes, sir.
Maybe a Halligan tool.
Yeah.
Hooligan, Halligan, but some type of pry bar, and then you need a sledgehammer to get that in there, and then you have to pry it open, and you need 2 or 3 people to actually do that process on an outward swinging door.
It is complicated.
It's complicated, and because it's complicated, it's not safe, right?
I would say essentially correct.
I mean, so if you have somebody, if this is our room, if this is our door, it's an outward swinging door to Mr. Turner, and so there's someone in this room, and you have no idea where, and that's part of the training. There's someone waiting for you, wanting to cause harm or cause someone else harm. It's much more complicated because you're trying to pry and you're trying to negotiate this door and then get in and tactically see what you have to do when you peel off or confront the attacker. Correct?
Correct.
That makes it more dangerous for an officer.
And more difficult, yes.
More difficult, more dangerous, and that's why that you should have, it's suggested to not do that alone.
That is correct.
And on an outward swinging door, one of the difficulties, I think it came out earlier, but I want to hear this from you. You can't just kick open a door on an outward swinging door because of the jam and the way it opens.
That is correct.
And so specifically, I want to talk about your training. And I'm not going to criticize it, I just want you to emphasize something for me, okay? I'm handing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 10 for identification only. You recognize Defense Exhibit 10, do you not?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, you already know what I'm going to show you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to stand behind you for a second. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So Defense Exhibit 10 is a copy of your curriculum, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And is it fair to say that it's a fair and accurate depiction of your curriculum? If you want to look through it.
I don't need to, sir. What specific question?
Judge, we move into evidence defense.
Submitted.
Thank you, Judge. So we can read here. A part of the course rationale is active shooter situations evolve quickly, and there is no way to anticipate their course or direction of action.
That is correct.
Unpredictable.
Yes, sir.
Right? It might start one way and then end up in a completely different way. Correct?
Mhm.
And is that a yes, sir?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
You don't have to say yes, sir, to me, but just for her, you can say yes at least. And so, is it fair to say that you've never heard of an active shooting situation, especially a school shooting, that ever started with a crash?
You refer to a car crash.
Yes, sir, yes. Thank you for that clarity.
I've never heard of
Yeah,
that.
because normally someone that is that sick in their brain and want to do something evil like that, they're very calculated. They get there unassuming because they don't want to give anybody notice to act and do the most amount of damage as they can, correct?
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
they don't want to get in a crash. So the fact that there's a crash is not normal for an active shooting situation or a school shooting, right?
The only one, sir, that actually comes to mind is San Bernardino, and that was more terrorism than it was, but they did shoot quite a few people.
Right. And so on course objectives, you have survival tips, you have negotiating, because that's part of it, right? You have to negotiate with somebody if there's a hostage.
Okay, potentially such.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, you're trying to cover all the scenarios. Would you agree that there's a difference if you look at that board over here?
I saw it, sir.
Okay, man, you're on it. Okay, so then active shooters, you have I don't have my glasses, barricaded subjects, and then you have potential hostage situation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and all those can stem from what you think is an active shooter initially, right?
It can initially start as an active shooter. That would be correct.
It says on negotiating overview, should the suspect or suspects barricade themselves and or take hostages, the first responders must be trained to de-escalate and control the situation through clear and concise negotiations.
It is called first responder negotiations, and I recommend all police officers take that course.
Okay. Your course?
Any course on negotiations,
I thought
sir.
you were trying to advertise. Okay.
No, sir, I'm retired. I
Okay,
farm.
no, I'm just making sure. Okay. And because of the different terrain, we feel officers need to train in these locations, in the actual location of a school, churches, movie theaters, strip malls. That's always the optimal position, is to train in the actual location, right?
That is our curriculum.
Yes, sir.
And sir, please understand, ladies and gentlemen, I am not, even now, I'm not allowed to disrespect, show anger, or say my training's better about somebody else's training. Please understand that.
I do.
All right? I felt that we had to train on all these other locations.
Yes, sir.
Other people do not.
And you're being very respectful. So respectfully, you can disagree with someone else's opinion on training.
Yes, sir.
And respectfully, they can disagree with yours.
I would hope they'd be respectful.
Yes,
of
I
mine.
do
Yes,
too.
sir.
I wouldn't tolerate it. But all I'm saying is these are just different people's opinions. These are suggestions.
Yes, sir.
They're not mandated. These are suggestions on tactics. Is that a fair statement?
Fair.
Okay. And on clearing entry, you have 1 man and 2 man, correct?
Yes, sir.
Under 1 man, it says CME, and that's you, right? Charlie Mike Enterprises?
Mm-hmm.
CME does not endorse nor encourage, what is that phrase?
Yes, sir, I don't have
I'm going to do it for you. It's okay.
Please read it. Yes.
CME does not endorse or encourage going it alone.
Okay, may I clarify this?
Of course, but is that what you?
Yes, that, and it says it's there.
Okay.
All right.
You go on and I'll ask you
All
some more
right.
questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, please understand that I don't ever endorse an officer doing something by himself. But if people are dying, then you've got to get in there and stop it. The first part of our entry curriculum, sir, in the manual, all right, in the drills that we do, it always starts with 1 man. Under the guise that, sir, that 1 man can make a difference.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Or 1 woman.
Or 1 woman,
Okay.
yes, sir.
So and then it says our goal in training first man entry and clearing is to give the officer the best chance for safety, survival, and success.
That is correct.
Because if the officer is not safe, then not only are the people he or she is trying to save won't survive, but the officer has to survive to make sure other people survive, right?
That is correct.
And that is how we define success. You have an alive officer that hopefully, God willing, can prevent more people from dying and have more live victims.
Yes.
Live people that have been put in danger, correct?
Correct.
Safety, survival, and success, right?
Yes, sir.
2 man and greater numbers, these numbers significantly improves a first responder's odds for success.
Yes, sir.
So it's kind of a percentage thing, right? So the more the people, the more officers, first responders, the better the training and the better the conditioning through stress inoculation, then it raises the percentages of success, correct?
Yes, sir.
And part of success, and we're going to sit in a situation where there's multiple deaths, unfortunately. If we can identify where the first responders prevented further death, even though one loss it breaks, and it's not like it's a
Yes, sir.
success. But success meaning that you've minimized the number of losses, correct?
You are attempting to minimize.
And so,
Yes, sir.
in your experience, if someone's in an office building and there's an active shooter in a certain aspect of an office building, and first responders move in and they contain that person in one aspect of the cafeteria, the office building, that stopped them from going to floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, or other offices in that building if they contained them,
It
correct?
is now contained, probably not controlled, isolated. So,
Right, and those are different tactics, right? And another officer may have a different tactic versus your perspective. But what I'm saying is, if you can keep an active shooter in a certain area, and there's other people exposed. In my example, this office building. Well, then there's been, in big picture, there's been some success because the loss of life has been limited to this area versus the rest of the building.
that is correct, sir.
And I think you said on direct examination, we talked about it, but I want to talk about something specifically you said on direct. You said that there are curriculums that say that you should wait for 2 or 3 guys to show up before you act.
Yes, sir, there is.
And you agreed with that at one point, but you have a different opinion.
Sir, I mean, in certain circumstances, sure, but I've never really agreed with it because I understand that an officer, almost every officer I know, if they're there and they can stop it, they're going to go for it.
And I agree with that, but you have to see what you need to stop before you can stop it, right?
Sir, it's based on, and you touched on it earlier,
Yes, sir.
Auditory.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, what you're hearing. And I do not know the circumstances very much on the outside that
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gonzalez was dealing with. All right, but witnesses, the first few seconds, I mean, everybody has heard that witnesses are not good because they start thinking about it, they start changing their story. The first 30 seconds to a minute talking to a witness, that's usually fairly accurate.
Can I ask you this?
Yes, please.
You're not relying on any studies to say that, right?
It's opinion, but
Okay,
there was a
well,
study out of
okay.
Northwestern University that talked about this.
Right, and there's plenty of opinions that talk about eyewitness testimony and how it's not reliable. You've heard of those studies too,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of studies out there, so let's talk about this. But when you show up to a scene, and if the scene is done, it's different than showing up to a scene where someone is still under the excitement or the stress of whatever they've seen or dealt with, right?
Yes, sir, we touched on it earlier, or this morning, on fight or flight.
Yes, sir.
All
And,
right.
and so if you show up to an active scene, and an active scene means it has not been dealt with and it's still going on, right? If you show up to an active scene and a witness is frantic and yelling directions at you, you're not suggesting that an officer should automatically just take whatever they say and then run into
No,
carelessly.
sir.
Okay.
I'm not, but what they say if they're pointing, and I don't know the circumstances.
I
sir,
understand you don't.
But if they're pointing, if they're trying to give me some type of description, I'm going to try and roll with it
Sure.
until or unless something better comes out.
And so when you mean roll with it, you don't mean act on it immediately. You just mean assess it, right?
I'm going to start moving that direction, sir, based
Well,
on other information.
And you're gonna give information to other potential officers. You have to communicate that, correct?
That is correct.
And if you get information that you realize as an officer, you show up at a scene and then someone frantically tells you something, and in your observation and orientation, you realize that's not accurate, right? It's not consistent with what you're seeing. Then you need to pause and get more information, right, before you put yourself in harm's way or
Would
somebody
depend
else.
on, well, yes, but it depends, how long am I going to pause for?
I understand. Well, we can go back and forth on
Yes,
every
sir,
situation.
I
is
understand
different.
that, and I'm not trying to be adversarial.
You can be,
I'm
as I
trying
don't
to
mind,
think this
but I
through.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're talking about safety and success, right? We want to make sure that the people are safe, but that includes the officer making a proper assessment, observing, orienting, making a decision, and then acting at some point, right?
Essentially, that is
Okay.
correct, yes.
And you said something, you talked about soft targets, right? That a school is a soft target?
Yes, sir.
Does the school not having locked doors make the school less soft or more soft?
Well, it makes it more soft.
Right. So doors that are not locked make that school more vulnerable.
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Pass away this judge.
Yes, sir. Just to make sure I understand, if you have a witness that's hysterical but pointing and giving description, you said I roll with it? What
I'm going to move. I'm going to go that direction, get on the radio as I'm moving, talking to, trying to communicate with my people, letting them know this is my direction, this is what I've been told, this is what I am hearing, all of that, sir.
So you do take that information seriously?
I do, very.
And that's based on also on a Northwestern University study about how accurate that early information is?
Yes, sir. That came out in about, the 1990s. Forgive me, I don't recall exactly.
So it's been around a while.
Yes, sir.
And officer safety, that's what your program is all about.
Yes, sir.
How to get there as safely as possible.
As best, as fast, and as safe, yes.
But with an active shooter, there's something on the other side if you don't move quickly. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, yes.
And what's that?
People are dying.
So you have to move quick.
I have to move quickly.
Time is of the essence.
Yes, sir, it is.
Every second.
Every second.
And the muscle memory on live rounds versus paintball versus airsoft. Remember that testimony?
Yes, sir. I do.
Developing muscle memory and getting used to the stress. Whether you're using live rounds, paintballs, or airsoft, is the rule still move to the target?
Yes, sir, it is. And please understand, ladies and gentlemen, the fundamentals of marksmanship are the same. Whether you're using what I would call sim rounds, marking rounds, paintball, airsoft, the fundamentals, sight alignment, trigger, squeeze, and how you move, how you control your weapon. It's all the same.
And when you say there's an assumption that a police officer knows how to use their own sidearm, what are you saying about that?
They've been trained on that since the academy. They've been trained on it since the academy. If they're a smart officer, they go to the range once or twice a week and train and practice with their own weapon. They make sure that they are equipped with the best weapon possible. Granted, most cities issue what they want you to carry, but I'm going to make sure I know everything about that weapon that I can possibly know.
Okay. And so are police officers certified on their weapons, or do they have to prove their worth on that weapon?
Unfortunately, we certify only once a year. Qualified, we call it. It's not really certification. But once a year, people need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, qualification isn't training. It is the end of result of training. Makes sense?
Okay. But as far as training, officers can go as often as they want.
They may have to pay for it out of pocket, but yes, sir.
That's the witness.
And so you talk about your active shooter course, that's 40 hours. May I give you a hypothetical?
Please.
If you had a loved one that needed a very important surgery and the surgeon came in and said, I've had 40 hours in this surgery of training, would you want to use that surgeon or not?
Certainly not,
Okay.
sir. I need to qualify my answer on something though.
Well, I know you're going to recommend more training.
No, but it was another training company that pushed that we can't do more than 40 hours on
Got
that.
it.
That's where I was going, so please.
I got it. But I'm making the point about 40 hours. 40 hours is not the holy grail of
No,
amount of
sir,
hours.
that's
to
why it's
train.
incumbent upon the officer to train on his own too.
Right, and that's why when it comes to shooting, you said if the officer's smart, once or twice a week, they're going to go to the range.
If you can.
If you can. And so that has to do with muscle memory, stress inoculation, and all the other things in doing with active shooting. 40 hours is just the beginning, not the end, correct?
That is correct.
And you talk about time of the essence. since every second matters, as the government asked you, locked doors give officers time to get there, correct?
Give me a scenario, sir, because
Let's
I'm not
talk about
really...
that office building.
Okay.
Someone's going into an office building or to another school, because I know you don't know about the facts of this case, right?
Yeah.
You have not reviewed anything. So let's say we're going into another school, and there's someone that has bad intentions, active, there's a person with a weapon that can do a lot of damage, and they're coming to the outside of the school to get in.
Yes, sir.
If that door was locked,
If it is locked...
time
yes,
is
sir.
of the essence. If somebody's calling the police, the fact that that person, that monster can't get into that school, that gives police time to converge and maybe engage the shooter, correct?
Hopefully, yes, sir.
But what I'm saying is,
No, I'm following
You
you.
want a
And
lot.
yes, sir. Hopefully, that's going to give me enough time to, as an officer, to move in there and neutralize it.
well, time is of the essence. So the more time that that shooter is outside the building, the better it is for law enforcement, right?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. And if law enforcement was outside, looking at, with line of sight, that would even be better. If that door is locked and then there's officers that had line of sight on this guy, that would be better too. For the officer to be able to react.
I
and
see what you're
respond.
saying, yes.
And let's say the person got inside the building for whatever way. If the individual classrooms were locked, that time is of the essence. And that would give law enforcement more time to catch up or to find out where this person is at to engage this shooter, correct?
Correct.
Now, when it comes to stress, you said something, and again, please don't take this as a criticism. I know you had limited things you can use when you have a mobile course. Because you were asked, I think Mr. Turner asked you about, does the curriculum discuss how to handle fear? And you say, yes, we discuss handling fear. Do you remember testifying to that?
Yeah, that is correct.
And I believe your answer was, you teach them to take deep breaths.
That's one of the ways to get your heart rate back under control.
Yeah, so the only way to handle fear is to put yourself in fearful situations. Is that a fair statement?
Enough, that's fair enough, yes.
That's stress inoculation. You
Yes.
inoculate yourself little by little. I mean, we do it in combat sports also. You do light sparring, touch sparring, then you do light sparring, and then you take then you go at it.
Yes, sir.
And now it's a full stress inoculation. You're in. But you inoculate yourself little by little to that full contact fighting.
And in
Similar
military,
to
we
this.
call it desensitization.
You
yes.
desensitize yourself to contact or to fearful situations or stress, and that prepares you for that. And again, you have to do what you have to do. This course didn't cover stuff like that.
In lecture, as best we could.
Yes, sir.
In the field, no, we did not.
Pass the witness, Judge.
Just one question. If a door is locked, it can give more time to an officer to neutralize the threat, correct?
Correct, yes,
That is if an officer is moving toward the gunfire, correct?
correct.
Whether a door is locked or not, if an officer is not moving toward the gunfire, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Say that again, sir. Yes, I think so, but say that
Whether a
again.
door is locked or not, if you have an officer that's not moving toward the gunfire, it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't help. Yeah, so yes, it doesn't matter.
That's what.
And an officer has to know where the threat is to move towards it, correct?
That certainly helps, yes.
Pass the witness, Judge.
No further question.
Recall.
No, Your Honor.
No, Judge.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. You are excused. Once again, the rule was invoked, so we'd appreciate it if you don't talk about the case until you're aware it's over.
Understood.
Thank you. The next witness, please.
State calls Christopher Salinas. May we approach, Your Honor?
I think you're on the way. may proceed.
Good afternoon. Please state your name for the record.
Christopher Salinas,
And Mr. Salinas, where do you currently reside? Don't give us the address, but just the town that you reside in.
Uvalde, Texas.
And in May of 2022, where were you living?
In Uvalde, Texas.
And I'm going to go ahead and take you back to May 24th of 2022. Are you the father of Samuel Salinas?
Yes, I am.
And just so we know, how many children do you have?
I have 4.
And is Samuel your third child?
Correct.
And what grade was Samuel in on May 24th of 2022?
In 4th grade.
And how old was he at the time?
9.
9 years old? And was he, where was he going to school on that day?
At Robert Elementary.
And who was his teacher?
Ms. Garcia.
And was that in
Room
room
112.
112? And was there something going on that day, something special for him?
Yeah, just a party after the day of school.
Is it-
Celebration of the end of the school year.
Okay. And was there an award ceremony that day?
Correct.
And do you know if Samuel did receive an award that day?
I do believe he did, yes.
Okay. Now, you were at work that day?
Correct.
Okay, but did you receive a text from the school?
I did receive a lockdown, I believe, text.
Okay. And when did you become aware that it was something more serious, that it was a serious situation?
When I got the phone call from the hospital.
Okay. And was that the Uvalde Memorial Hospital?
Correct.
And when did you see Samuel on May 24th?
After I got back from the call, then I left work. So it was about 2.5 hours later when I saw him.
Okay, and I was at the hospital?
Correct.
And what was he at the hospital for?
He was shot on his thigh,
Where was he shot at?
on his right thigh.
And did he have shrapnel in his right thigh?
Correct.
Now, does he still have those shrapnels and those bullet fragments in his right thigh?
Yes.
And what, is he able to resume activities because of the shrapnel?
Very limited.
Okay. Explain to the jury his injury.
His gunshot wound to his left thigh. He can walk. Very limited. He has pain all the time on his right thigh. So he puts more weight on his left thigh, on his left leg, so he won't feel so much pain on this gunshot wound where he got his nerves and everything. So he complains a lot of pain through any exercise activities, walking, running. He'll do it, but then the next day he can't get up or walk or anything because of the pain is so severe for him.
Okay. Now, is there certain things that trigger Samuel or bother him that you've noticed since May 24th? And can you explain to the jury what those triggering events are?
Popping sounds, slamming doors, loud arguments, just violence on TV, things of that nature.
What about any particular colors?
Red.
And why red?
I think it's just a picture of what he saw in the classroom.
Okay. And have you seen Samuel disassociating with certain members of your family? Okay. And have you seen him instead only gravitating to certain members of your family? Okay. And who would that person be?
My oldest son, Sebastian.
Now, Mr. Salinas, is the child that you picked up from the hospital on May 24th the same child that was taken to school that day?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's the witness.
May I proceed?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's me.
Hey, Mr. Salinas, my name is Jason Goss. I'm sorry to hear about how Samuel's still suffering. I am relieved that you still have it, and I just wish the best for you. I'll pass away.
Redirect. He passed. Did you have any
Oh,
redirect?
I'm sorry, Ron. No redirect.
Okay, recall either side.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, sir, you are now released from the subpoena. You're now subject to recall. You're free to leave or stay, whatever you want to do. We just ask you don't discuss the testimony you gave in court until you're aware the case is over with. Thank you. The next one is
The state calls Mercedes Salas.
I think we need. No, we're gonna need it. Okay. That's fine. Good afternoon. Would you raise your right hand, please? You do solemnly swear the evidence in the testimony you're giving this cause will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
All right, take your time, and we're gonna have you have a seat over here in the witness stand, right behind, right in front of the bailiff. Proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name for the record.
I'm Mercedes Salas,
And Ms. Salas, where are you currently employed?
a Uvalde CISD,
And what is your job position?
a fourth grade teacher.
In May of 2022, where were you employed?
UCISD,
And what was your job position then?
fourth grade teacher.
And in May of 2022, what campus did you work at?
Robb Elementary.
And how long had you been working at Robb Elementary as of May of 2022?
Since we had the reconstruction, so I want to say about 8 years.
And what grades did you teach in May of 2022?
Fourth grade.
Now, you said the construction, were you,
The reconstruction because we were zoned before,
okay,
so now since they moved us, so first, second, this campus, third, fourth, this campus.
okay. And so was Robb Elementary, did it have new and old buildings also?
Yes,
Okay, and was the fourth grade building considered a new building?
yes,
Okay, and that's where you worked?
correct.
I'm going to pull up for you what's been previously admitted as a state's exhibit. You got a pointer there right in front of you. And we're going to ask you to kind of show us where was your classroom in the fourth grade building?
106.
Okay, 106. Thank you. Now, I want you to explain to the jury when, at the time in May of 22, when you walked into your classroom, what is it that we would see when we walk into your classroom?
Okay. My door is right here, and my desk is right here. Had a window here, a window here. My library area, my view Sunday was right here, and my desk were around here.
Okay. And did you have one of those kidney-shaped desks?
No, mine was just a regular wooden rectangular
Okay.
desk. It was a good size.
Okay, good. Now, did you began the year at Rob, so 2021, 2022 school year, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And now, I'm going to ask you to explain to the jury as far as what your understanding is of what a lockdown is.
A lockdown is we turn off the lights, make sure that our door is locked, and we are out of sight.
And had you received training as a teacher for the Uvalde Independent School District on lockdowns?
Yes.
And who provided those trainings?
Some years it was administration, some years we would have officers that would come and do our training, so it does depend.
When you say officers, do you mean law enforcement officers for the Uvalde School District?
Correct.
Okay. Now, how often was that training? Was it once a year, twice a year?
The lockdowns were once a year.
Now, who provided the training to the children?
We did, teachers.
The teachers did? Okay. And what did you train them to do?
I trained them that we have to hide, we have to be very quiet, and I always told them don't sit next to a friend because we're gonna talk.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I would turn off the lights and I would make sure our door was locked.
Now, how often did the children receive training on lockdowns?
Every single time we had a drill,
Okay.
we would practice our training.
Okay. Now, as far as the training, what, you're sitting there with lights out, doors locked, everybody quiet. What are you waiting for to end the drill or the lockdown?
Our admin would come on the intercom and they would tell us that it was clear and they would say it twice.
Now, that's for the drills. What about if it was a real situation?
We were told as some law enforcement would let us know somehow.
Okay.
So we just wait.
Now, Ms. Salas, I'm going to take you back to May 24th of 2022. What were your normal work hours on that day?
That day I had morning duty, so I was there at 7.
Okay. And was that bus duty?
Yes.
Okay. And after you had bus duty, what did you do that day?
I went to my classroom and we started our writings. We had work to do, so.
Now, was that a special day? Was there anything going on special for that day for Robb Elementary?
Yes, we had our ceremonies.
Award ceremony?
Award ceremony, yeah.
Okay. And what time was your award ceremony?
Can't remember the time, but I know we were rushed out of the cafeteria because second grade was gonna come. So maybe 10:45, I'm not quite sure.
What did you do with your students after the award ceremony?
We went to our classroom and they wanted to watch a movie, Zootopia.
Zootopia?
Mhm.
Okay. And where were you around 11:30?
At 11:30, I was in my classroom.
Okay. And were the lights off while y'all were watching this movie?
Yes,
Okay. Do you remember how many students you had at the time?
16.
16. Is that how many had started the day with you?
No, I had a few that went home
Just
after the ceremony.
16 is still a pretty good number.
Yes, we were gonna have snow cones at the end of the day,
And so the children,
so they wanted to have a snow cone.
okay. Now, around this time, did something that you hear catch your attention?
Yes,
And what was that?
a gunshot.
Okay. And what did you do when you heard the gunshot?
Well, at first I heard one gunshot because we were all watching the movie. Then I heard a gunshot and that registered and I just looked up. And then I heard, but it was far when I heard it. Then I heard a second one and that one was really close to the building. And one of my students heard the gunshot and he looked at me with panic. He's like, gunshot. I'm like, I just nodded yes, because I didn't want the other kids to hear.
Okay, and then what did you do?
I immediately started locking down my classroom.
Okay, so at this point, you've only heard gunshots,
Hmm.
and you have a student that's heard a gunshot, and you immediately go on lockdown.
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do? When you say you went on lockdown, what did you do? You already had your lights out.
Right, I had my lights out, they were off, and my kids were scattered because they were laying down comfortable in their little pillows and stuff. So I started grabbing them and said, come on guys, let's go, let's sit down. They're like, but why miss? I said, you don't worry about it, let's just do it. So they started doing it. And so I'm, going through a list in my head, making sure I'm doing everything that I need to do. And then I received a Raptor alert at 11:32.
Okay.
And the last thing I had to do was to make sure that my door was locked, which it was locked. I normally kept my door locked.
Okay.
It was always locked.
Okay.
But I just had to make sure it really, really was.
Okay, so when you said made sure, what did you do to make sure that the door was locked?
I stepped out of my classroom
And what did you
and
do?
I slammed my door to make sure, it was, and then I wiggled to make sure it didn't open, so I knew my door was locked.
Okay. Now, what were your instructions? I want to be kind of clear with the jury. What were your instructions to your kids at this lockdown?
My instruction to the kids were, we're going to hide, we're going to be very, very quiet, and they did.
Now, did you stop the movie?
Oh yes, we paused the movie. The movie had to be paused. We couldn't have any sounds in my room.
Did you pause it or one of the children?
One of the kids paused it because they were close to the ViewSonic.
And did you tell that child to do it or they knew to do it?
They need to do it.
Okay. Now, at some point, did you look outside your window?
As I was looking in my room, scanning my room to make sure all my kiddos didn't stay closer, because I had some in my library area because it's a comfortable place.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the library area, it was right above a window.
Okay. Now, so did any one of your students help you lock the door?
No, they did not help me lock the door. I went outside by myself, but one of them was following me because every drill, he always liked to follow me, to do the drill. He's like, miss, it's just a drill, miss. I can open the door for you, miss. I can follow you. I said, this time it was different. I told him, you can't follow me. But he was relentless. I have to follow you. I do this every time with you. And I said, but not today.
Okay.
It's different today.
And you knew it was different because of why?
Because I heard the gunshots.
Okay. So at the time that you're locking the door, are you hearing more gunshots?
At that point, no. I stepped outside, and because the way we were built inside, I was able to turn and I looked south just to make sure nobody was out there. And then I was gonna turn to look north, but I was the first classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But something inside of me said, don't stick your head out.
Okay.
So I did it, and I quickly went back into my classroom.
Now, do you remember any odor at this particular time? Anything that
Not at that time.
okay. What were your students doing at this time?
My kids were sitting down except for one student.
Okay.
One student was standing, and as soon as I went into my classroom, I saw him standing, and I said, you have to sit. And I grabbed him and I just went down with him like that. And as soon as I did that, I heard a gunshot inside in the hallway.
Okay. Now, while y'all are down and you're sitting down, what's going through your mind? Can you explain that to the jury?
When I heard the gunshot in the hallway?
Yes.
Okay, when I heard the gunshot in the hallway, I immediately texted my family.
Okay.
And I said, gunshots in the hallway, pray for us. I texted my husband, my daughter, and my son.
What were your students doing at this time?
They were sitting quietly because they heard them too. And I didn't want them to hear anything else, so I told them, you need to pray. So you need to pray. And I couldn't say it loud, and I had a lot of kids, so I just put my hands up.
Now, what is going through your mind? Do you think you're sufficiently protected at this point?
No, I knew I was not protected, and for that reason, I knelt. I was on my knees because I figured if someone comes in my door, I need to protect my students. So I looked at 3 chairs that I had close to me, and I figured, okay, I have chairs. I can throw chairs, and I can quickly get up. That's why I stay kneeling, because I can get up really quick, and I can just start throwing the 3 chairs that were right there close to me. And at that point, one of my students said, Mrs. Ellis, and I turned and I looked, and he had a pair of scissors. And I looked at him, I'm like, okay. I didn't tell him to put them away because those scissors made him feel safe.
Did any of your other students grab scissors?
I think a few more, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay. What could you hear as the shots were going off?
Before the gunshots started going off, I heard pounding. I heard pounding, like if somebody was pounding on my door, like the rattle of my doorknob. And then I thought someone's trying to get in my room. So I started praying. I was just praying to God, like, protect my door, shield my wall. And after that, then I heard a lot of gunshots. And after hearing so many gunshots, I started smelling gunpowder.
Did you hear any children at this time?
I heard kids screaming. And when they screamed, I heard the gunshots. Then I didn't hear them anymore. So I knew something happened to them because I couldn't hear them anymore. And whoever it was, I knew he was close to my room because I could just smell it. And I could hear the kids before he shot them.
But after that, you didn't hear any more screaming?
No.
Based on where you were, do you believe the students in your classroom heard the same thing?
Yes, because one of my kids said, Miss Ellis, they're screaming. And I said, I know we have, because it was one of my girls, and I said, they're screaming because they're scared just like you. I had to fight with them.
And what did you tell your children to do at this point?
I just told them to keep on praying.
Did you tell them to keep being quiet?
Yes, I told them just to be quiet and to keep on praying.
Now, why is it that you kept telling the children to be quiet?
Because of the smell of the gunpowder, I knew whoever it was, he was close to my room. And I didn't want that person to hear that we were in there.
So the whole time you're still thinking about how to protect your kids?
Yes, I kept on staring at my door, making sure no one came in through my door, and I kept on looking at my chairs that I had there. So I figured, okay, I can do this.
Now, were you eventually evacuated, Ms. Salas, from your classroom?
Eventually, yes, I was.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury how you eventually got out of that classroom?
Someone through the window said, is anyone in there? And my kid said, Miss, someone's there. The police is there. And I thought, I said, okay, no, because they haven't identified. I didn't say that to them, but I was just thinking, in my head, I was like, okay, they haven't identified who they were, so we're going to keep on being quiet.
And can you tell the jury why that is? Why somebody's saying, the police, but they haven't identified themselves, why you're reluctant to respond? Can you explain to the jury why that is?
Because they didn't identify themselves. They didn't say this is the police.
Is that part of your training?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what did you do?
So then I told my kids to be quiet. And then I heard them say again, is anyone in there? They screamed, is anyone in there? And I told my kids, like this, like to be quiet. And then after that, I heard my windows breaking. And I just stared at my windows and I saw a baton at the end. So I figured, okay, these must be officers because who else would carry a baton? So that's when I told my kids, okay, let's get up and let's go.
Okay. And were the officers rushing to get your kids out of that classroom?
They were,
Okay. Now, who was the last one out of your classroom?
me.
And why is that?
When my last kiddo got out, I turned back and I started walking back to my classroom, to the middle of my room,
And why is that?
because I had to make sure nobody stayed frozen.
And that was a possibility.
It could have been a possibility. They were scared.
But you wanted to make sure that every student was out?
Yes. So I remember walking back to the officer that told me, ma'am, you got to get out now. I remember walking in and I did my hand and I said, you need to wait. I said, you just have to wait. I have to make sure none of my kids are in there. So I turned around and I went back again to the middle of my room and I looked and I looked and I looked again. And then I turned around in the middle of the room and I remember saying, okay, I'm ready to go.
And is that when you exited the room?
That's when I exited the room.
Just to clarify, your windows were not shot out?
No.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury what your thoughts are about your students that day during this event?
My kids were so brave, being so close to danger. They listened to my instructions to survive. I was very proud of them.
Pass the witness.
May I proceed, Judge?
Please.
Ms. Salas, my name is Jason Goss. I'm one of the lawyers that represents Adrian, and I have a few questions for you. I think, I want to start out and just say, we all appreciate that you protected those kids, walking through their training. You're proud of them. I can see why. I think when that glass broke and you realized that the police had come to get you out, what did you feel like at that time?
At the moment, I felt that someone was finally there to help us.
Okay, and relief.
Yes, I did feel relief.
Because I'm sure you had every right to. You thought, especially with somebody jiggling at your door handle, you thought you were ready to die.
I did. I made peace with God.
That's right. And that's terrible. It's terrible that anybody would ever have to experience that. I want to talk about, but when the police got you out, that was...
A sign of relief.
Yeah, sure. So the door handle, it's one of the things you testified to. You were very direct about, and even to the point of you've already heard a gunshot, and that's why you're starting to lock down, right?
Right.
And you still go out of your room to make sure that that door's locked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, you just have to say yes or no.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yes, sure. So you go out and check it, and here's one of the things that I haven't been clear on. I know that you have to use a key to lock and unlock the door.
Right.
And if the door is in a locked position, the ability is you can open it from the inside.
Correct.
But no one can open it
From the outside.
Right. So even if you made sure it was locked, you would then stick your key in it. Open
Right,
it,
to unlock it and lock it back, correct.
And then go back.
To get in.
Sure. So, and there was a time before you started hearing those gunshots in the hallway when you knew that there was a shooter inside of the school, that you said somebody was jiggling your handle, or you heard your handle jiggle. Is that right?
Right. Are you talking about the gunshots outside or already inside?
In the hallway.
Okay, yes. After the gunshot, then that's when I heard that.
And so somebody trying to.
Right.
And I think at the time you assumed it was the shooter
Yes,
and couldn't get in because your door was shut.
correct.
And so your training and locking the door and making sure it's locked, if that is indeed the shooter, like you suspected, that stopped him from getting into your room.
Correct.
The you know, as far as the, I saw, or I think I heard you testify that you had been, at that point at Rob, you had been at Rob for 8 years.
Right, since the reconstruction.
Right, so 8 years from 2022 is 2014?
Yes, about 2014.
And it was your first year at Rob, 2014, but not your first year teaching.
No, that year was not my first year at Rob.
Oh.
Of the 2022?
No, no, 2014.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes. Before I was at Anton Elementary.
Right, because I think, or maybe I saw it in your statement, you'd been a teacher for about 15 years in 2020.
Since 2008.
Okay, so your first year at Rob, what room were you teaching in?
Room 111.
And at a point during this, did you recognize the person who you now know as the shooter?
Yes.
And that person was one of your students in 111?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
While he was in 4th grade?
Yes.
And I don't ask you that to cause you pain. I ask you that because 111, it's a classroom like the other classrooms, but a person who's been in 111 might know the features of 111 because they had been there before.
Correct.
I'll pass it with.
No more questions, Your Honor. She's excused.
Recall.
Not subject to recall, thank you.
Okay, ma'am, you are excused. You're welcome to stay or welcome to leave. We just ask, since the rule's been invoked, don't discuss the case with anybody until you know it's over with.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
If you want to call your next witness, please.
Ruby Gonzalez.
George, right here. You solemnly swear the evidence of the testimony given in the cause will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
All right, you can lower your hand, just have a seat over here in the witness stand for us. Adjust that microphone if you need to.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you introduce yourself, please, to the jury?
Yes, my name is Ruby Gonzalez.
Ms. Gonzalez, I can tell you're a police officer.
Yes, sir.
Who are you with?
The Uvalde Police Department.
How long have you been with the Uvalde Police Department?
Approximately 1.5 years.
And before you worked at the Uvalde Police Department, where did you work?
I was employed with the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department.
How long were you at the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department?
About 1 year, give or take. Maybe a little over 1 year.
So when did you start?
In July of 2021, I believe.
And that was your first job as a police officer?
No, sir.
What was your first job as a police officer?
My first full-time job as a police officer was with the city of Uvalde
And that was when?
in December of 2016.
Is that what started your law enforcement career, 2016?
Full-time, yes, sir.
And before that, you were part-time?
Yes, sir.
And tell us about that.
I was a reserve officer for the city of Junction.
Of what?
The city of Junction?
Junction, Texas.
Yes, sir.
So when were you a reserve officer?
For 4 months, and then I got an opportunity to come work for the city of Uvalde.
And what is a reserve officer?
It's just a officer that your license is being held by that department. If they need you to work any type of security or anything like that, that's pretty much what you do. If they're short on shifts or they need coverage somewhere, you just go in and you cover that for that
Is it a
department.
paid position or a volunteer position?
It's a volunteer position.
So you don't get paid,
No, sir.
but your commission is held, and what does that mean?
That means that my license will be active, so I'd still be able to work any other type of employment that is available to officers.
And what is a commission? How do you get a commission?
By the agency. So they hold your license for however long you want to stay employed as a reserve officer, and that's what they do, is they just hold your license.
Do you have to have training to be a reserve officer?
Yes, sir.
And tell us about that.
You have to be a licensed peace officer with the state of Texas.
So you have to go through basic police officer training
Yes, sir.
and pass that.
Yes, sir.
When did you do that?
In August of 2015, I believe.
What got you in law enforcement?
My family, they're all law enforcement.
And so you chose to go into law enforcement. You made application, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And was that for each job that you just discussed with us, whether as a reserve officer in Junction, the school district, the city of Uvalde, you make application to work there?
Yes, sir.
And if I understand correctly, you went to Uvalde Police Department first. Was that a full-time or part-time job?
That was full-time.
And what did you do?
I was a full-time peace officer.
And what were your duties?
Enforcing traffic laws, investigating crimes, maintaining the peace, things like that.
Maintaining the peace?
Yes, sir.
Did that require making arrests,
Yes, sir.
putting handcuffs on people?
Yes, sir.
And from there, you decided to apply at the school district police department?
Yes, sir.
What caused that change?
Just where I was at in life, I had a lot of other things going on in my personal life, and I felt like I needed just a change of pace.
Okay. And was this a change of pace?
Yes, sir.
So you went to work for the school district police department?
Yes, sir.
And how many people were at the police department when you went to work for them?
I believe there was 5 of us.
And can you name who they were and the rank?
Yes, sir. My chief of police was Chief Arilondo. My lieutenant was Lieutenant Hernandez. Then I had a co-worker, Officer Ruiz, Officer Flores, Officer Gonzalez, and myself.
And so you named 3 ranks, is that correct?
2,
There's a police chief,
yes, and then there was just a lieutenant.
a lieutenant
Yes, sir.
below the police chief,
It was, yes, sir.
that rank,
Yes, sir.
and then what was the rank of the rest of you?
Just peace officers, just school-based officers.
And is rank important if you're being told to do something?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
Anytime you're given a directive from somebody who holds a higher position than you have to abide by what they're telling you.
And you've been both at Junction, the city of Uvalde, and the school district. Is that true for all 3 of those
Yes, sir.
police departments you've worked in?
Yes, sir.
That they have ranks,
Yes, sir.
and you abide by the people that are above you?
Yes, sir.
So the school district, who was the person of highest rank?
Chief Arredondo.
And what was your jurisdiction at the school district?
All the campuses within Uvalde Independent School District.
And that was y'all's primary jurisdiction?
Yes, sir.
So that if something happened on the campus, who was required to be the people that responded?
We would,
The school district?
yes, sir.
Okay. Even though it's in the city of Uvalde,
Yes, sir.
the school district police officers handle problems within the city,
Within the school district, yes, sir.
within the school district. So on May 24, 2022, were you working that day?
Yes, sir.
What was your shift?
I can't recall if I was a 7 to 3 or the 8 to 4.
But at any rate, no later than 8 o'clock, you went to work.
Yes, sir.
And where did you go to work?
That day I was at Morales Junior High.
And what were you doing at Morales Junior High?
I was covering the school for another officer.
For another officer?
Yes, sir.
So were officers assigned to specific campuses?
Somewhat, it varied, just depending on where we were needed at most.
Would you describe that for us?
Yes, sir. So typically the high school, you would have more officers responding there just because you deal with a little bit more because the students are older. Secondly, you would have an officer assigned to the middle school. So that would be like the second tier. So you would have an officer designated at that school at all times as well.
And how many middle schools were there?
I believe just one.
Okay. And how many officers were assigned at the high school?
I believe 3. Yes, I believe 3.
And then elementary schools, did they have officers assigned specifically?
No, sir.
How did y'all handle elementary schools?
We would rotate. How Chief Arredondo wanted us to do it was if we came in as the 7 to 3 o'clock person or 7 to 4 o'clock person, that officer would typically rotate to the elementary schools.
And what does rotate to the elementary schools mean?
You're making rounds, you're ensuring doors are locked, showing the administration in the main office that you're there, you're available if they need anything, and then if they give you the all clear that you were okay to go, you would move on to the next school. And you pretty much did that same rotation throughout this district.
So one of y'all's duties was to make sure doors were locked?
Yes, sir.
And if doors weren't locked, what did you do?
We'd bring it up to the administration and let them know, or we address it to the teacher.
Excuse me?
We'd bring it up to administration or we'd address it to the teacher.
Okay. And who was on that rotation to the elementary schools to check to see if doors were locked?
Can you say that again?
What officers within the school district were assigned to that rotation to go to the elementary schools and make sure the doors were locked?
It was all of us.
Was that you?
Yes, sir.
Did it include Adrian Gonzalez?
Yes, sir.
And y'all made sure that that was part of y'all's regular routine?
Yes, sir.
And are you familiar with the term lockdown procedure?
Yes, sir.
What was your familiarity with lockdown procedure?
Out of sight, lights off, doors locked, and stay out of view.
And did you have anything to do with the training on the lockdown procedure?
Not that I remember.
Okay. That was done primarily by the administration.
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure.
If other officers in your department did that, that's not something you're familiar with?
No, sir.
Okay. And as a school district police officer, was there requirements for training that was different from your training with the police department?
Yes, sir.
And what was that?
We had to take a school-based law enforcement course.
A school-based law enforcement course?
Yes, I believe it was online. It was an online course that we took.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In addition to that, did you take active shooter training?
Yes, sir.
Where did you take that?
That was hosted at the Uvalde High School.
And who was teaching that course?
I believe it was taught by two. I believe it was Officer Ruiz and Officer Gonzalez.
Is that Adrian Gonzalez?
Yes,
And that's the man who's sitting in the courtroom today.
yes.
And how long was that course?
8 hours
And where did you take it?
at the Uvalde High School.
And was the course divided into classroom as well as field work, or was it just classroom, just field work? Explain that to us.
The morning was the classwork portion of it, and the afternoon was more of like a hands-on version of it. They run you through scenarios.
They would do what?
Like run you through scenarios?
Scenarios?
Yes, sir.
Did that include solo entry?
I believe so,
That is one-man entry?
yes.
So on May 24, 2022, you worked that day?
Yes, sir.
When did your shift start approximately?
Give or take around 8 a.m.
And what did you do as part of your shift?
I responded to, I was at Morales Junior High. I was in the courtyard area while the kids arrived for school, rotated to the cafeteria, back down to the playground area. Once the bell rang, we walked the hallways to ensure that the students went into their classrooms, checked the restrooms, make sure nobody was in there, like skipping classes. And then the kids broke for lunch.
Okay. So that took most of your morning?
Yes, sir.
And when did you break for lunch?
I believe the students left for lunch like around 11, between 11 and 12, I'm not 100%.
What did you do then when the kids broke for lunch?
I left campus as well
And where did you go?
to go get lunch
And where did you go to get lunch?
at my residence.
How far is your residence from Robb Elementary School?
Maybe less than a mile, about a mile.
Okay. And did you get to finish your lunch?
No, sir.
What, if anything, interrupted lunch?
I heard gunshots when I was outside of my residence.
And what were you doing outside your residence?
I was taking my dog out.
So upon going home, is to take care of your dog?
Just, yes, sir, if I'm able to.
They get a little noon walk or something?
No,
like
sir, just to use the restroom.
that? Okay, very good. So your dog, you and your dog were outside and you hear gunshots.
Yes, sir.
That was your first notice?
Yes, sir.
And did you have your uniform on?
No, sir.
Tell us about that.
I took off my uniform when I went inside. I used the restroom, came back out, put my dog on the leash, and that's when we went outside.
Is part of your uniform uncomfortable?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
The duty belt and the undervest.
The what?
The duty belt and the undervest. It's
The duty belt and the undervest?
Yes, sir.
So you take those off when you can, just for comfort.
Yes, sir.
And the undervest, is that a bulletproof vest?
Yes, sir.
Is that assigned to all of the officers at the school district?
Yes, sir.
And the duty belt includes a firearm?
Yes, sir.
And does the school district actually provide y'all with weapons?
At the time, yes, we had the handgun.
Handguns?
Yes, sir.
Were there any rifles?
No, sir.
Okay, so just a handgun for school district officers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you heard the gunshots, could you tell where they were coming from?
At first, no, sir.
Okay, and then what?
I went inside. I took my dog, I went inside, and that's when I heard on the radio something about a vehicle accident or yeah, I think it was a vehicle accident. that occurred first.
And did that have anything to do with the gunshots you heard as far as you were concerned at that time?
No, sir.
Okay. So what, did you receive additional information?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what that was.
Shortly after that, I heard an officer go over the radio saying shots fired at the school.
And did you recognize that voice?
Yes, sir.
And who was that?
That was Sergeant Coronel.
Sergeant Coronado?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do when you heard Sergeant Coronado say that there were shots fired at the school?
I grabbed my duty vest, my duty belt, I'm sorry, excuse me. I grabbed my duty belt and I got in my police unit and went to the school.
Okay, so once you heard that there were shots fired, you went to the school.
Yes, sir.
And what happened, when you got to the school, describe what you saw.
I arrived off of Old Carrizo Road. So I parked my unit at that intersection of Old Carrizo and West Cargill.
And why did you park there?
It's just the way I came from my residence. I parked my unit, I blocked off that road, and then I started going towards the school from where the cafeteria is.
And so you had to get to the school from where you parked on Old Carrizo Road.
Yes, sir.
And what route did you take?
I just cut straight. What route did I take from my house to get to the school?
Well,
or-
no, ma'am, from after you parked.
I just ran straight across the road. Old Carrizo is right across the street from Robb Elementary. So I cut through the parking lot where it's a small parking lot, I guess, where they have some of the faculty park. So I just cut through there.
And did you say you ran?
Yes, yes, sir.
And what caused you to run?
Just the sense of urgency.
And where did you run?
To the outer wings where they have the classrooms.
Which classrooms?
I believe it's maybe the second grade wing, second or third possibly.
Okay. And what did you see there?
There was other officers in that general area.
Okay. And so what did you do?
I met with some of the Border Patrol agents that were there as well. They were talking about needing to get keys to start evacuating children.
Okay. And so do you know how long it was from when you heard gunshots that you actually got there?
I do not know, sir.
Okay. Because it took until Coronado said gunshots, and then you had to get dressed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you ran, drove and then ran
Yes, sir.
to the location. When you got there, tell us how many officers were there.
Where I initially showed up, there was maybe about 10, possibly.
And did you ever go to the 4th grade wing?
I did, yes, sir.
And tell us what you saw there.
There was officers outside of where the building was. They were conducting crowd control of the people that were showing up. There was vehicles parked in the roadway. There was a bus parked in the roadway. Some ambulances.
So by the time you got there, they'd already summoned ambulances and buses.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as far as number of officers around the 4th grade wing, how many officers did you see approximately, if you know?
I can't give an approximate number. But
And did you go into the 4th grade hallway?
no, sir.
Tell us why.
Just the amount of police cars and things that I saw outside, I felt like if I was to have gone in there, it would have just taken up more space.
Okay. Was the hallway full of officers?
Yes, sir.
And can at some point that become a dangerous situation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you did not inject yourself where there was already a hallway full of officers?
No, sir. I made use somewhere else. There was other things that needed to be done.
So once the hallway is full, then you find other things to do?
Yes, sir.
And how do you find other things to do?
I ask around, ask other officers who have been in that area longer than I have if they needed anything or what they need of me to do.
So as an officer, you arrive at the scene and you go to people who've been there before you.
Yes, sir.
And why do you go to the people that are there before you?
To get information, they can relay any type of information that they may have. Given that they've been there on the scene longer than I have, they have certain details that I'm not aware of.
And is that standard when you go to a crime scene?
Yes, sir.
To ask the people that are already there because they have greater information?
Yes, sir.
And do you rely on that information as you make decisions?
Yes, sir.
And in this case, what did you do?
One of the officers said the road needs to get cleared for additional buses. So I moved some police cars that were blocking the roadway. I assisted with some of the crowd control,
Tell us about the crowd control.
some of the parents and people that live in the neighborhood were standing like near the roadway. So one of the officers had instructed me to kind of keep them back, keep them at a safe distance.
Did that take a significant number of officers to do crowd control?
Yes, sir.
And you joined in on that?
Yes, sir.
And when we say crowd control, was that around most of the building?
I'm not sure. It was just where I was out
Where
at
did
the
you
moment.
go?
I went at the intersection of Bettis Street and Geraldine.
Okay. And you did crowd control there?
Yes, sir.
For how long?
Give or take maybe 10 minutes or so.
Okay. And did you see Chief Arredondo there?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you go to the south door of the 4th grade wing?
No, sir.
Okay. But Robb Elementary is the school district's jurisdiction?
Yes, sir.
And who is the highest person in law enforcement in that jurisdiction?
That would be Chief Arredondo.
Pass the witness.
Thank you, Judge. Officer Gonzalez, we've never met before, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. Have you ever testified before?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, this is cross-examination. I'm going to ask you questions. I may push back on some of the things you said, but it's not to be disrespectful or to question your character. There's serious allegations, and so I need to ask some serious questions, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you don't understand my question, just ask me to repeat it, and I'm happy to do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what did you review in preparation for your testimony today?
As far as, like, what do you mean?
Anything. What did you review? Video, statements, reports?
Oh, no, sir. I didn't review anything.
Nothing.
No, sir.
Did you prepare any reports after this incident?
No, sir.
No one asked you, Rangers didn't ask you to make a report or just to notify, annotate anything?
Not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
Are you going off of your memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And since this horrible incident, obviously there's been a lot of media, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've seen a lot of the media, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
And there's been a lot of talk about this, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're gonna try to have you focus back on what you think you were perceiving and seeing at that time. Is that fair? Is that okay, officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You talked about jurisdiction. I'm not sure whether the government asked you questions about your jurisdiction with all the campuses in the district. Did you hear him ask you that?
Yes, sir.
But there were certain officers designated to certain schools.
Yes, sir.
Like Robb Elementary did not have a designated officer.
No, sir.
You know that Adrian was designated to the high school,
Yes, sir.
and that was his full-time position.
Yes, sir.
He was not designated to Robb.
Yes, sir.
None of you were.
Yes, sir.
But actually, and I know you know this, as a Texas peace officer, the whole state of Texas is your jurisdiction.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you can make an arrest anywhere. That's a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
An agency holds your license to make sure that you're a peace officer, but as a Texas peace officer, if you're in Lubbock, you can make an arrest if there's an arrest made in your presence.
Yes, sir.
An offense, I'm sorry, thank you, Jason. If there's an offense done in your presence, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so because Adrian wasn't assigned to Robb Elementary, he didn't have the keys to Robb Elementary.
Yes, sir.
And so I want to talk about keys because you were asked about lockdown procedures. The police department played a role in teaching lockdown procedures, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Have you ever been part of that teaching curriculum?
Not that I'm aware of.
And when you mean not that you're aware of, what do you mean by that?
I mean, I put on presentations at the school, but it was more towards underage drinking, vaping, things like that. It's possible that I may have contributed somehow.
Okay. And when you say you made a presentation at the school, are you a subject matter expert in underage drinking?
No, sir.
So anybody can just give a presentation and you're really a facilitator, you're just clicking through slides and you're presenting information that somebody else created. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And anybody can do that. Someone can put on a training, but really they're just clicking through slides and facilitating information that somebody else put together. That happens often.
Yes, sir.
That's what you did with this underage drinking one, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, on the lockdown procedure, you know this from your experience that all school doors should always be locked.
Yes, sir.
Because they asked you a question about officers going around to check if doors were locked, right?
Yes, sir.
And is that because, unfortunately, there was a kind of a culture of teachers leaving doors unlocked for convenience so that they can get in and out of these school classrooms?
Yes, sir.
And you heard of the magnet system, right?
Yes, sir.
And so teachers in that whole district, approved by some of the schools, would be used this magnet system to where if a door was technically locked, you could use that magnet system to stop the latch from catching on the frame, correct?
Yes, sir.
And because they didn't have a key fob process in and out, it would be convenient for either a student or really substitutes to get in and out because they didn't have keys, right?
Yes, sir.
But that was, and I'm not being disrespectful, we just have to talk about this. I mean, that culture was against, I was going to use the word antithetical, but it's against the procedures of the school district, right?
Yes, sir.
Because those doors have to be locked.
Yes, sir.
Now, one second. Now, when it comes to lockdown procedure, will you go through the steps that a teacher should follow when a lockdown has been called?
Ensure that the doors are locked, turn off the lights, close blinds, get the students out of view.
And out of view, because if somebody has bad intentions and has a weapon, if they're looking in classrooms, they're going to see if there's someone in a classroom that'll catch their attention to go in, correct?
Yes, sir.
And time is of the essence. The government's been using that phrase, and I agree with it. Time is of the essence on these active shooter situations, right?
Yes, sir.
And those locked doors give law enforcement like yourself time to be notified, and we'll talk about the Raptor system in a second, to be notified so you can respond and hopefully engage someone with bad intentions and neutralize them,
Yes, sir.
right? And so the first layer of defense is the school building itself to be locked.
Yes, sir.
And that's why it has to be locked,
Yes, sir.
correct? The second layer of defense are those individual classrooms, and they have to be locked.
Yes, sir.
And the only defense that these teachers and these precious children have, the only defense they have is those locked doors.
Yes, sir.
All the other things that you described are tactics to not be seen, but that's not a defense, right?
Yes, sir.
So if children were underneath the table hiding, but the door wasn't locked, that does them no good.
Correct.
And you know that unfortunately on May 24th, 2022, Robb Elementary, the building doors were not locked, correct?
Correct.
And you know now that room 111 was not locked.
Correct.
Some of your training for active shooter, you said was 8 hours?
I believe so.
Was some of that online, or is that another training you were talking about?
No, that was a separate training.
But some of the training, and it's not your fault, it's just because you have to get these qualifications. Some of them can be done on a computer screen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, your active training, the government asked you about it, was an 8-hour training, and you said that Officer Ruiz and Officer Adrian Gonzalez facilitated that, right?
Yes, sir.
And facilitated meaning that they did some classroom, right? The morning was classroom, right?
Yes, sir.
And the afternoon, you classified it as hands-on. But do you know the term stress inoculation?
No, sir.
Okay. Stress inoculation, and you did some of the training, if you don't understand that's the labeling of it, is where you're placed in a stressful situation where your heart rate is up. You're trying to recreate a similar situation that you may deal with to inoculate you, get used to that circumstance in real life. That's part of your training in the academy?
Yes, sir.
And you have combatives?
Yes, sir.
And you have hand-to-hand, open-hand techniques?
Yes, sir.
You have control techniques, because you can't always punch or strike somebody, right?
Yes, sir.
And in your academy, you have open-hand strikes, correct?
Yes, sir.
You can use forearms.
Yes, sir.
God forbid, sometimes you can use an elbow, right?
Yes, sir.
Hammer fists,
Yes, sir.
elbows,
Yes, sir.
knees. And so all that can be done, but then also you can use manipulation tools where you're manipulating someone to get handcuffs on them without having to strike them, right?
Yes, sir.
And then in the continuum of use of force, some officers have an ASP, right?
Yes, sir.
In the old days, I'm an older dude, they had a baton.
Yes, sir.
You have tasers,
Yes, sir.
and then you have your sidearm
Yes, sir.
with backup magazines,
Yes, sir.
and you have handcuffs.
Yes, sir.
So all of those are use of force that you're trained into, and some of those you're trained to inoculate, to do those under stressful situations, so hopefully you don't need to, but if you need to, you can perform well.
Yes, sir.
So with this afternoon scenarios that you had with Adrian and Officer Ruiz, it was more of a conversation, is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, sir.
Right? I mean, you guys didn't go through the school and use Robb Elementary or one of the high schools to simulate an active shooter.
So they ran us through some scenarios like in the auditorium area.
Okay.
I don't know if that's more or less what you're.
No, it's
Sure,
not,
fine.
but let's talk about that, because I want to go where you want to go. So the auditorium is a big area which has kind of escalated seating, right?
Yes, sir.
And so it's mainly for plays or for gatherings or maybe pep rallies. That's what that's used for more. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In the auditorium at the high school, there's rooms on the behind the main area.
At the high school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all my questions are in relation to Robb Elementary, okay?
Okay.
And in your afternoon portion of the scenarios, you didn't have a hallway with different rooms that you cleared hallways and you got into a stressful situation. Do you know what stacking is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you guys didn't train in active, realistic stacking to where you're down a fatal funnel. The jury's heard a lot about a fatal funnel. You know what that is, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so, and then under stress, work rooms and clear a school. You didn't do that in the afternoon, right?
No, sir.
You essentially maybe walked through or talked about scenarios that if this happens, keep this in mind, and you're planning suggestions, right?
Yes, sir.
This, in 8 hours, if you split that up, 4 hours in classroom, you're 4 hours of talking about scenarios, essentially.
Yes, sir.
And so Adrian, Officer Gonzalez and Officer Ruiz essentially facilitated it and talked about it, and then everyone, it was kind of a group discussion based off you're reading a manual, you're reading a curriculum that somebody else gave them, like you did with the underage drinking, and then everyone's talking about what they trained before.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, right?
Yes, sir.
And when the government asked you, did you guys go over solo training, you paused, and I wrote it down, you said, I believe so, but you're not sure.
No, sir.
Right. And so solo training is very different than stacking and active shooting, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that in active shooter training, it's usually done with some type of long rifle.
Yes, sir.
M4, AR-15,
Yes, sir.
and then your sidearm is your secondary weapon.
Yes, sir.
And so when someone stacks, there's usually a shield, and then people are behind them, and they're moving. At some point, once you breach a room, people are going to break off, clear a room, and then hopefully engage the attacker,
Yes, sir.
the bad guy. And you guys didn't do that.
No, sir.
Have you ever trained in breaching a door?
No, sir.
And that's not typical training for a school police officer. And I'm not being condescending or disrespectful. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but that's not typical for a school district police officer, right?
No, sir.
But even though you haven't been trained in this, you know that there's a difference between breaching a door that opens inward versus open outward, correct?
Yes, sir.
On outward, you need tools, and the jury's heard about the tools you need.
Objection, she says she has not been through that training, Your Honor.
But she
So
says she
this
knows
would
about
be
it.
beyond her. It'd be speculation if she hadn't been trained in it.
Okay, only answer if you know, ma'am. Go ahead. I'll overrule the objection.
They don't want me to ask you these questions, but do you understand this
All I'm going to ask
training?
the questions that they know, not that they speculate about, Your Honor.
Yeah, I just, only answer if you know of your own personal knowledge.
Yes, sir.
Understood?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Have you heard through your training experience, not personally, but you know about outward doors, breaching an outward swinging door, correct?
Yes, sir.
You know that you can't kick open an outward swinging door.
Yes, sir.
You don't need special training to know that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you know that there's tools needed to breach an outward swinging doors. I'm not asking you how to do it, you just know there's tools needed, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I was gonna ask you. Now, on May 24th, 2022, am I moving too fast?
No, sir.
Okay, and you know if I get a little passionate, it's not towards you, okay, Officer Gonzalez? It's not you at all, okay? So just bear with me, and if you think I'm, just tell me to, hey, Nico, calm down, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. You said you left to have lunch at home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I believe you testified you live, without giving the address, you live less than a mile from Robb Elementary.
Yes, sir.
And you heard gunshots?
Yes, sir.
And then I believe you said that you have a bulletproof vest that you put back on. Do you know if it's rated for long rifle or just for handgun?
I'm not sure.
They don't let you know that when it's probably for just a handgun, or you don't know?
I'm not sure, sir.
Okay. But that you said that you heard, initially you heard there was a vehicle accident, and that would be a 1050, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I say 1050, different things that are called in, different incidents that are called in have a labeling.
Yes, sir.
And so, at 1050, and then you believe you heard Sergeant Coronado say that it was shots fired,
Yes, sir.
right? Did you later come to find out and know that Sergeant Coronado, Officer Salcedo, and Officer Mendoza were actually on the west side of Robb Elementary before the shooter made it into the building? Did you find that out later on?
I believe it was mentioned, yes, sir.
And so you don't know where Sergeant Coronado was when he put this out on the radio. You believe it was him. Are you sure it was him, or do you think it was Adrian?
I believe it was Sergeant Coronado.
Okay. Why do you think it was him?
I distinctly remember hearing him yell into the radio.
Okay. But he's not your sergeant, because he's not with he's with Uvalde, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you don't know where Sergeant was, whether he was at the corner, you later found out, or where he was, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said that you got there and you got there quickly. And I want to bring your attention to that, because you described to this jury, based off questions from the government, but it seemed like you condensed time, so I want to make sure we go piece by piece, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear you correctly, that when you got there, you parked on Old Carrizos, and where else? What was the other street?
West Cargyle.
West
Cargyle Street?
Cargyle. Okay. Where is that in relation to Robb Elementary? May I approach? I know I can approach this, sorry. You already gave me permission. Lock's right here.
So it's right
You
here.
can use this.
No, it's just right here.
Can you see, Bob? Why did you park that far away?
Just that's the route I took to get to the school from my residence.
But if that's the route you take, and I'm just asking, I'm not criticizing, I just would know. If Robb Elementary's here, and you heard shots fired, did you relate shots fired to Robb Elementary, or you just heard shots fired, you didn't know where it was at?
I just heard the shots fired. I wasn't aware of where it was at.
But it seems like you were going to Robb Elementary. At what point did you orientate yourself to Robb Elementary, and why did you know it was here? How?
They said I heard on the radio he's shots fired, he's going towards the school, and I just
You
made the
reassessed.
assumption.
Okay. So you reassessed, and then in your mind, you parked here.
No, sir, I parked further down.
Where?
Right about here.
Okay, here. So you actually went to the front of the school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Then that's my mistake. And then when you came in here, you entered onto the campus.
Yes, sir.
And then you said, I believe you said on direct examination that you ran into Border Patrol agents already.
Yes, sir.
How long did it take you to get to the school?
Maybe about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, roughly.
Right, and I know it's hard to sometimes, so you're telling us you're within 2 to 3 minutes, Border Patrol agents were already at the school?
I saw one, yes.
Okay. And what other officers? Because you mentioned a number of officers. You said how many officers there, the government asked you, and you said possibly 10. How many agencies did you see from that side of the school?
Maybe about 2 to 3 agencies.
Okay, so 10 officers within 2 to 3 minutes of that shots fired. Within 2 to 3 minutes, there were 2 to 3 agencies and 10 officers roughly.
Yes, sir.
And that doesn't include, because you're on the other side, you're on the, I guess technically the east side, even though that's the front of the school?
Yes.
That doesn't include, now you know that Sergeant Coronado, Officer Mendoza, and Officer Saucedo were here, right? You know that now.
Yes, sir.
And you know that they were there with line of sight, and the shooter was on the west side of the building, before he went into the building.
Yes,
Correct?
sir. Yes, sir.
But these 10 officers were on the east side, so that doesn't include the 3 officers on the west side, and then Adrian was on the south side, southeast side,
Yes, sir.
correct? Did they tell you at that time what time they got? Because they were there before you, so if it took you 2 to 3 minutes, they were already out of their vehicles, right?
Yes, sir.
So they were there. What were they doing?
I'm not sure, sir.
Were they taking cover? Were they walking around? Were they pacing? What were they doing?
When I started speaking with them, they were standing like in the breezeway of where the office is.
They weren't running to the gunshots?
No, sir.
And so you understand the government's theory is that every time a gun was
Our
fired?
theory is, Your Honor,
Well,
that
does
has to
she-
be speculation.
Well, I mean, I asked her if she understands it. If she doesn't, she can say no.
I'll sustain the objection.
And so you have 10 officers from 2 or 3 agencies standing in the breezeway, not running to the gunfire, but yet you proceeded towards the building though. You did.
Yes, sir.
Had you heard more shots by that time?
No, sir.
Had you heard any shots when you got at the scene?
No, sir.
At any point did you hear any shots?
No, sir.
How close did you get to the building?
I think at one point I was by the fence area off of Geraldine Street.
Well, you said that you went to the actual hallway, but you saw there was a lot of officers in there, a lot of officers. And so you said that you wanted to be helpful, so you said that, I want to use your words, there were other things needed to be done.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to ask you what those were, okay? But, so at some point you knew that there was a lot of, so by the time you got there, you arrived, if I tell you, and the government can correct me also, if I tell you that you arrived at 11:35:42, does that sound about right?
Possibly, yes, sir.
Right, and are you aware that the monster got into the building at 11:32:58 roughly?
Yes, sir.
Shots fired, 3 minutes, so you're actually it took you 2 to 3 minutes to get there, right?
Yes, sir.
And even though it took you 2 to 3 minutes to get there at 11:35:42, 10 officers were already there on the east side, 2 to 3 different agencies, and then you had 3 officers on the corner with line of sight on the west side of the building, correct?
Yes, sir.
And none of them were running to the gunfire.
No, sir.
Are you aware now, and if you didn't hear it, you didn't hear it, but are you aware now that there were gunshots after 11:35:42?
No, sir.
You're not aware of that?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to bring you back to when you were at home, just before we continue. From your house, you said you heard a gunfire. How close do you live to Diaz Street?
Maybe like roughly 0.2 miles.
So you're closer to Diaz Street than you are to Robb Elementary.
Yes, sir.
And you know now that there was a gunfire at Diaz Street, right?
Yes, sir.
Because that same monster shot his own grandma in the face
Yes, sir.
on Diaz Street
Yes, sir.
before he goes to murder children and to try to kill cops, right?
Yes, sir.
And so it makes sense what you testified. You heard the shot before you heard the 1050 wreck.
Yes, sir.
Because the wreck happened as that animal was trying to get away from what he thought was a murder of his grandma,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
And
sir.
so you heard the shot on Diaz Street of his grandma. That coward tries to go away, then he wrecks the car, and then that's when the 1050 comes out, the accident.
Yes, sir.
And so that's actually consistent. So when you said there was other things that needed to be done, you described some of them. Do you agree that the most important thing that needed to be done was to get those children out of the school?
Yes, sir.
But yet, and I'm not bragging on you, I'm just saying, but there was a lot of officers that weren't doing that. They were formulating a plan, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you went to do crowd control.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Officer Gonzalez. Pass the witness, Judge.
So when you got there, you heard no shots,
No, sir.
and you got there within about 3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
So all of the shooting, as far as you were concerned, had been accomplished by the time you got there.
Yes, sir.
You couldn't have done anything to stop it after 3 minutes.
No, sir.
So those first 3 minutes were very important.
Yes, sir.
And you talked a moment, I'm not sure the relevance of it, but you talked a moment about the hand-to-hand combat techniques you had,
Mhm.
so that you would understand the stress, and somehow that stress inoculates you so you can act when you need to.
Yes, sir.
When did that training occur?
That one occurred in the academy.
The
And-
basic academy?
Yes, sir.
And did you have any training since then?
No, sir.
So it was one-time training,
Yes, sir.
and that was enough for you to have the stressful inoculation that the defense was asking about.
Yes, sir.
And finally, it's safe to say that you were a co-worker of Adrian Gonzalez, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
This is hard for you.
Yes, sir.
Prefer not to be here.
Yes, sir.
But you did talk to Texas Ranger about who said shots fired, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Let's see if this refreshes your memory, this blue line.
Yes, sir.
And who was it that you heard say shots fired?
At this time, Officer Adrian Gonzalez.
Not Coronado, but Adrian Gonzalez. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Pass the witness.
So when I was asking that question, you were mistaken. I was right when I said it was Mr. Gonzalez, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Or at least appears to be that way.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. And so the government asked you all of the shooting had accomplished by the time you arrived.
Yes,
Remember that question?
Yes, sir.
And you arrived at 11:35:42.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that at 11:35:43 there were shots fired in room
She
111?
just said that that's all the shots fired she heard, Your
Well,
Honor. That has to be speculation.
Well, no, this is from Texas Ranger report, Judge.
It
The
doesn't
same
matter
report
if
that
the
they're referring
report
to.
is from what she saw or heard. That's what I'm asking the
Yeah,
limitation.
I guess,
to be.
man, if you said all the shots were done, you're gonna say you don't know that, but it's your personal knowledge.
That's
So
right.
I'll rule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. And so, do you know that at 11:35:43 there were shots fired in room 111, 1 second after you got there?
No, sir.
Do you know that at 11:35:44 there were shots fired?
No, sir.
At 11:35:44 another shot fired.
No, sir.
11:35:51 shots fired.
No, sir.
11:35:51 shot fired.
No, sir.
11:35:51 shot fired.
No, sir.
11:35:52 shots fired.
No, sir.
11:35:52 shot fired.
No, sir.
11:35:52 shot fired.
No, sir.
11:35:56 shot fired.
No, sir.
11:35:57 shots fired.
No, sir.
I'm gonna stop, but so all the shooting hadn't been done at 11:35:42, correct? Obviously,
Yes, from what you're saying, yes, sir.
yeah. And I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to bring light to this. But there were 10 officers on the scene on the east side, and there were 3 officers that saw this person before he went into the building, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pass the witness, Judge.
And I was just asking, as far as you were concerned, you testified that you didn't hear any shots. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And so just based on what you knew,
Yes, sir.
is that a fair way to do things, to testify about what you know?
Yes, sir.
Let other people testify about what they know.
Yes, sir.
Pass the witness.
Anything else?
No more questions, Judge. Thank you, officer.
Yes, sir.
Recall either side.
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the rule's been invoked in this case. You are released from the subpoena. You're released to go. But please don't talk about the case with anybody until you're aware the trial's over.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you your afternoon recess. Let's take about 10, 15 minutes. Will everyone rise for the jury, please?
Wow, that litany of no sir, no sir, no
Right.
sir, that was almost painful to listen to. What'd you think about it?
Well, I think that I don't know, and it wasn't clear to me. Maybe it was clear to you all. Do they know? Did they have some way to document when she arrived, or is it speculation?
No, it sounded like they have it exact.
Okay.
And it sounds like they know because it was in the report that was written later on by
Okay.
the. By
I mean,
the
they're very
rangers.
specific. 11:35,
Yeah.
42.
They know when her car pulled up.
Well, I think some of the points that the defense made, that there were shots being fired while she was there, even though she did not hear them, but there were a lot of other officers
10 other
standing
officers,
around
yeah.
who did not run towards the gunfire.
Right.
Is the way I picked up on that.
Yeah, that's the same thing that I thought, that there were all these other officers there, and he's saying a shot was fired, a shot was fired. That was very effective, as you
Right.
said, and that no one else either like ran into that classroom.
Right. So they were standing around trying to figure out what to do.
Make
Right,
a
they're
plan.
formulating a plan. right?
Formulating a plan, trying to figure out what to do.
What-
And at that point, they were also talking about evacuating the children. And that we know that Adrienne Gonzalez was involved in
Yeah.
evacuating children.
Right. And what was interesting to me is, you know, as she's talking about it, she's describing herself being at home. She hears a gunshot, and you don't call it in.
Yeah,
You don't
that-
go. You don't
Why
go
did it
check
take
it
her
out.
so long to get there? He asked her, well, how long did it take you to get there?
Yeah, I was interested in that. I'm surprised there wasn't a follow-up question on that. And what I think is interesting is that what she heard was when the killer shot his grandmother in the face.
Right.
So, but again, if you hear gunshots, I'm surprised you don't call it in.
You don't call it in. You don't go check it out.
Yeah.
It you know, it probably all happened too fast for her to really be able to react
Right.
and do something. But you're like, why didn't you call it in?
Yeah.
You know, you're a police officer and you're on duty at that point. So
Right.
I don't know.
It may have been Tanya, that she felt like, oh my gosh, I've got to get dressed.
Could be.
This is something's going down here, and I got
Yeah.
to get dressed.
The other interesting part of the testimony this afternoon was Ruby Gonzalez. So she was the teacher
Yeah.
that apparently she also heard the gunshots, but she locks her door. And then the defense says, well, and that's why he didn't get in, because she actually testifies that she hears or she thinks that he is jiggling the door handle, the shooter.
Right.
Which, by the way, that was his teacher when he was in fourth grade. That was so.
chilling.
That's one of the reasons that some people believe that he headed towards those classrooms. He was in classroom 111 when she was the fourth grade teacher.
Well, the defense is saying he knew exactly the layout of that room.
Yeah.
And that was his room, his classroom.
Which probably
is,
made a big difference. Yeah.
sure. And again, the defense goes back to Officer Coronado, Sergeant Coronado, Sergeant, wrote it down, Saucedo, and Sergeant Mendoza, and they were the three officers on the west side of the school with a clear view of the shooter going in that.
And could have stopped him.
And could have stopped him had there been a locked door, because as he said, the first line of defense is the building. If there's
Right.
a locked door, that's the first line of defense. That gives the officers time to get to the shooter. Second line of defense is the classroom. The classrooms are supposed to be locked. That would give them additional time to get in there and apprehend or stop the shooter. And something too is, again, these gentlemen, any of those officers are subject to prosecution because there is no qualified immunity in a criminal case.
Right.
So they are vulnerable. They are something I'm sure they're having to consider.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens. What do you think about all the discussion about the training that Ruiz and Gonzalez conducted as they were walking her through that?
I think maybe, I don't know if that really was very impactful, but I think what it was is that just to show that, the defendant, Officer Gonzalez, knew enough to even train on the subject.
Right.
So I think that's mainly what it was, is that he did have knowledge, because he trained other officers. So I think that's basically what that was
Was it
about.
effective?
I don't know. Well, I think the defense said, well, he used PowerPoint slides that, maybe somebody provided
What was it, like death by PowerPoint? The
Yeah,
trainer
exactly.
talked
But
about.
they also said that all of them trained with an AR-15 style rifle and not their duty gun or a handgun, and so that would make a big difference because again, they're trying to point out the defense that Adrian Gonzalez only had a handgun.
Right.
He did not have an AR-15. He did not have a high-powered rifle where he could take down the shooter, even if he had seen him.
Right, exactly. In fact, the photographs from their expert, and okay, let's talk about the expert. So you bring an expert in to basically support your theory of the case, to support the charges in the indictment, right? And I would say, as far as what the state needed him to say, he said,
Right.
okay? But the bottom line is, when he was taken on cross-examination, he admitted that this is my training, that there are other training.
There's other perspectives.
Right.
Yep.
This is
But
my viewpoint.
This is my viewpoint, but if you're the state, okay, he confirmed what they've been saying, basically.
That you should go in, your training says, no matter what, even if you're by yourself, you do not wait for backup, you go in.
And interestingly, we saw the photographs, and Adrian Gonzalez is training on the long gun. He didn't train on a
Right,
pistol.
which to me is a big difference.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it didn't. And I was waiting to hear more about training. What did you really do a bunch of training on what to do if you're the solo person? You
Right.
get there
Right.
and you're the only one there. And so, but do you think that what you heard today gives a whole lot of reasonable doubt?
Yeah, I do. I do think that. I think that without more testimony from other witnesses that either dispute the notion that he had some ability to contact the shooter, understand that the shooter went between cars, and that might have been one of the reasons why he couldn't see them. I think that if they have a witness that come in and say he had a higher standard of duty, and what that duty is and what exactly that duty looks like, then that is something that might be interesting. But basically, again, we're talking about three minutes, and the fact that by the time Adrian Gonzalez got around to that spot, that shooter is in the building because the door wasn't locked.
And I wanted to correct myself. It's actually Mercedes Salas was the teacher, not Ruby. Ruby was the last switch. So Mercedes Salas is the one who locked the door, and no one got into her classroom. And then she was also the teacher of.
And I
the
did
shooter.
find her testimony compelling, not for
Yeah.
conviction, but compelling just
Right.
for the, every time I hear one of these teachers describing, I just told them to pray.
I
and you're
know.
just
She
like,
smelled the gunpowder.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like I
it's
could
just-
smell the gunpowder. I knew he was so close because I could smell the
I know.
gunpowder.
I know.
What did you think about the fact that they also brought 2 more parents up there?
Again, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Again, I think it gives a face to a victim, and it is impactful, and God love him. That child, as the dad testified, that he is dissociated now from his family. The only person he has contact
Right.
with is his brother. I mean, it breaks my heart. And so it impacts us, right?
Right.
Like I said, it breaks my heart. It's breaking that jury's heart to hear that testimony.
but
But is it Adrian Gonzalez?
But I know.
yeah, and that's the thing is like, does it lead you to, because fundamentally you have to tell a story that leads you to the elements of the offense.
Right.
And And I have yet to hear a witness that really walks us through what that higher duty was. And you would
Yes.
think that you would want to have that thematically throughout the whole trial.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. And one of the things that we were talking about was with these witnesses, is it relevant to this particular trial? Is it relevant during this case in chief, or is it more relevant during a punishment phase,
Right.
where that's when definitely the victims come in and share how their life was affected, what this has done to. I don't know.
The impact statements. Are you surprised that the judge is giving him so much leeway?
And what you made a yeah, I am. You know, one of the things again we have to remember is that what comes out of a lawyer's mouth is not evidence. However, when you're asking a question, and you can ask a leading question when the witness is on cross-examination. So if people are wondering why does Mr. LaHood, sounds like he's testifying. Well, what he's doing is he is asking a question, a predicate basically, and getting a response. So then that becomes evidence, right? But on direct, you're not supposed to ask those leading questions, but these are all leading questions that he's asking the witnesses, and that's what he can do on cross-examination. And when he brings his case in chief, if he does, there are some people who would say, rest.
Yeah.
You don't have to bring any evidence. But if he does, then he brings his witnesses, and the prosecution has the ability to lead their witnesses too and cross-examine their witnesses just like that.
And based on what you've seen, would you rest?
Ooh, it's a hard decision, but based on what I have seen, without somebody telling me that he absolutely defied his duty, that he did not follow his training, because it's in the indictment, right? That I would argue, because if you close and rest, then there's closing arguments. You could argue that the state did not prove all the elements of this offense.
And during the jury selection, they tell the jurors that we don't have to put on one single witness.
Right.
We don't have to put Adrian Gonzalez on the stand. We don't have to do anything if we don't think that they haven't proven their case. We don't have to do a thing. And they have the burden of proof.
And that is the way it should be, because the government charges people with an offense, and so therefore it's the government's burden to prove that case. And they have the full force of the government behind them. Whereas normally a defendant, certainly a defendant can hire a private investigator or hire experts and subpoena people. Absolutely can do that, but it's different than having the resources that a government would have.
And is it kind of also a little bit of do no harm? I mean, do you run the risk of if you start putting your own case on,
right, right, exactly.
Especially if you think you're ahead.
Yeah, mitigating any opportunity to have maybe something blow up in your face. Yeah, sure. Are
you surprised by the lack of objections we're hearing?
Yeah.
Yes, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And yes, I am. And I'm wondering, and you make a very good point, because I think a lot of these issues were taken up in pretrial hearings. And I don't know what those pretrial hearings were. I don't know what the judge's ruling was. I don't know what everybody was told to do, not to do. But I guess, and also I want you to know that during voir dire, and you were there, but during voir dire, you explained to the jury that I have to object. It's annoying. I know you're going to be frustrated with me. I know it breaks up the sequence of the testimony. However, as I mentioned this morning, there is a record that is being made, and there are required objections. When this case goes on appeal, if you don't object, you waive the objection. And so therefore, I don't know why there aren't more objections to relevance or sidebar comments or whatever, but they have made a decision not to do that.
I mean, this case just seems to be going on and on and on. And I mean, if you look at their witness list, they still have a bunch of witnesses to call.
Right.
As Tanya was mentioning earlier, do you feel like it's just really overwhelming the jury? Because we still haven't gotten to the 911 calls, the dispatch tapes, the surveillance videos, the body camera. There's still a bunch of witnesses to call.
Yeah, and like I said, that body cam is going to have to be sponsored by a witness.
Right. But you would think they would put like Coronado on. I mean, it's Coronado's body cam where you're going to see, and that's.
But Coronado's standing at the corner with the ability
so they're going to ask him. Maybe you don't put him on there.
I don't know.
Maybe you don't want to hear from him. I mean, but okay, but maybe if they don't,
the defense calls them.
Okay, they're back in court.
The defense calls them.
I'm Myra Landry.
And Miss Landry, what do you do?
Who is that?
Landry.
How long have you been a 911 communications supervisor?
For 11 years.
And who do you work with?
Uvalde Police Department.
Has that been for the past 11 years?
No, it's been for the past 17 years.
Excuse me?
17 years.
Okay, so before you were the 911 communications supervisor, you had another job with the police department?
Yes, I was a 911 dispatcher.
A dispatcher?
Yes.
Okay. So you worked your way up from dispatcher to supervisor?
Yes, sir.
So let's start at the very beginning then. What is a 911 dispatcher?
It's a 911 emergency call taker that I guess it can be different. Every agency is different, but they assist with taking 911 calls or non-emergency calls, and they also route officers to calls for service.
Okay. So they can get 911 calls in and then they can tell officers where to go.
Correct.
And do you have to be certified to work in the 911 office?
Correct, yes.
And tell us about the certification.
Within a year of your employment with an agency, you would have to attend a 2-week training in order for you to get your license to be a 911 dispatcher.
And what is the training for a dispatcher like?
I mean, you have to attend several trainings for it as far as like what to do as far as like entering anything in the system or, radio etiquette or anything like that.
Okay. Let's start with the dispatch room in Uvalde for the Uvalde Police Department.
Okay.
Could you describe the room for us and how it is equipped?
So the room it's small. We have a total of 3 consoles, however only 2 are fully equipped with 911 and radio.
Okay, so it has 3 consoles, and what is a console?
It's just a workstation for a 911 dispatcher.
So you have 3 places for dispatchers to sit.
Correct.
And that's called the console?
Correct.
And how is the console equipped?
It has about 6 monitors. On each monitor, it has different softwares for different agencies that we dispatch for.
And so by monitor, are we talking about something like a small screen, a small TV screen or
Yes,
something like that?
a computer monitor.
And there's 6 in each console?
Correct.
And does each console have a different 6 screens? Or are they the same screens, just 3 times?
No, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're trying to say.
That's because it was a horrible question. You have 3 consoles. Each console has 6 screens.
Mm-hmm.
Are those screens for each person sitting in the console identical?
No, except for the 2 on top, which are designated for 911 only.
Okay. So tell us then what each screen is dedicated to, if it is.
So we have 2 that are dedicated for 911. One of them shows the 911 maps, and the other one just shows where the call is coming from, the call information. The other 4 we each individually have for, 2 of them are usually for the main agencies that we dispatch for, their CAD program, which is just a program on where we type in the calls for service.
Okay. So the top 2, I want to start with that then. The top 2 screens are dedicated exclusively to 911 calls,
Correct.
so that you can see where the call is coming from, as well as a map of it, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you record 911 calls?
Yes.
And are those recordings done automatically?
Yes.
And are they done by an instrument that also attaches a time to that recording?
Yes.
And so that if we wanted to recover a 911 call and went back, we could not only recover the contents of the call, but we could also recover what time that call came according to what the machine attached to that number.
Correct.
And it is somewhat accurate, at least within minutes, is that correct?
Yes.
But maybe not milliseconds.
Correct.
Okay. And so now we've covered the 911 calls, and then there's 4 other screens, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Describe
Yes.
what those are for.
Like I mentioned earlier, 2 of them are set for the 2 major agencies that we dispatch for.
How many agencies do you dispatch for?
Total, we dispatch for 17 agencies.
17 agencies out
Yes.
of Uvalde.
Yes.
Could you tell us just in general terms, are all of those agencies law enforcement?
Most of them, yes, including EMS and fire.
So you have law enforcement, EMS, which is emergency medical,
Yes.
and the fire department.
Correct.
Are there any other purposes for the dispatch consoles or screens?
Designated for them? No.
Okay. And so, out of the city of Uvalde, you dispatch not only for the city police,
Correct.
you also dispatch for the sheriff's office,
Correct.
the school district,
Yes.
and who else?
Sometimes if needed, we will dispatch for DPS, Texas Department of Public Safety, and in the surrounding little cities that we have in Uvalde.
So you reach out and help other smaller communities?
Correct.
Okay. And as far as the dispatch consoles, those differ from a 911 call?
Yes.
Tell us how it differs.
I'm sorry, you said say that one more time?
The dispatch consoles are different from the 911?
Yes, I guess you could say, yeah.
I guess describe for us what these 4 screens show a dispatcher.
So the 4 screens, one of the screen is for a program that we do call for service, and that's for the Uvalde Police Department, and then some of like the smaller entities that we dispatch for. And then the Uvalde County Sheriff's Office has their own software that we do calls for service for on another screen. And the other 2, we just have either, our daily email up or, just for, or the recording system is also up too as well, just in case we need it to replay something.
And so if a call comes in, whether from 911 or from dispatch, does the dispatcher then able to direct services to what is needed?
Yes.
Tell us how that works.
As far as like when we receive a call, or?
Let's start with a 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in.
Correct.
The dispatcher can talk on that 911 call,
Mm-hmm.
and it's recorded.
Yes.
And if it's a call for service for police department or fire,
Mm-hmm.
tell us what the dispatcher does.
The dispatcher would get the call information from the caller who's calling it in. We would do a call for service, which is, and then we would just type out the address, and depending on the, jurisdiction, whether it's city or county, we would dispatch who needed to be responding to that location.
And when you dispatch, does it go out to all of the agencies that you serve?
Not necessarily. Again,
Tell
it
us
just
about
depends
that.
on the jurisdiction.
I'm sorry?
Again, it just depends on the jurisdiction.
And so if you have a call that just needs to go to EMS, you can direct the call just to the radios that are tuned to that channel? Is that
Correct. Yes.
And if you want it to go out to more than one agency, how do you do that?
We would just, there's a thing that we could do which is called a patch, and we can patch 2 channels together so the way that the same information can go out. But we only do that if it's like a, I guess if it's like something that all agencies are going to be responding to maybe. But if not, then we would just broadcast on each individual channel.
And then each agency has their own channel?
For the most part, yes, but it's just mainly, we have, Uvalde Police Department has their own channel, but there's a separate channel which the Sheriff's Office is, and that's where a lot of the other agencies communicate with dispatch with.
Okay. And so, the radios that the police officers have, are they allowed to change channels and listen to other agencies?
Yes.
Okay. So it's just a matter of tuning to a channel. Y'all can choose to dispatch to one channel, but anybody can choose to pick up that channel.
Correct.
Okay. So we've talked about then a 911 calling in, and then dispatch can send somebody to that area, correct?
Yes.
And in addition to that, can police officers talk to dispatch?
Yes.
And how does that occur?
Just the way we would dispatch a call for service out for them through the radio.
Okay. And so it just comes in on a different screen is the only difference?
No, it'll be on the same screen, the same radio that we communicate with them on.
Okay. And when a police officer dispatches or sends information to dispatch, can his fellow officers also hear that?
Yes, if they are on the same channel or not scanning.
Okay. But if you're on a different agency, it just may depend on if you're on that channel or not.
Correct.
Now, in addition to 911 calls being recorded and the time recorded on that, are dispatch calls also recorded?
The non-emergency lines?
Yes.
Yes.
And on those emergency dispatches, does the recording instrument also attach a time that it came in?
Correct.
And once again, close within minutes, but perhaps not seconds or
Yes, sir.
milliseconds.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And so how many dispatchers do you have working at one time?
Right now it's 2.
And back in 2022, how many did you have?
2 including myself, so 3.
So 3 total? And who were the other 2?
Working that day or?
On May 24, 2022.
Do I say their full name or?
Yes, please.
It would be Gianna Santianes and Samantha Diaz.
And were you there also?
Yes.
So there were 3 people in the room on May 24, 2022?
Correct.
And did it become extremely busy at that time?
Yes.
At about what time did it become busy?
Probably around 11:30 in the morning.
Okay, and can you tell us what happened?
Yes, we received a 911 call stating of a accident that was near the funeral home in Uvalde, Texas.
And did you actually hear that call come in?
Yes, I was in the same room.
Okay, and when the call came in, it was a 911 call?
Correct.
And did y'all dispatch from that call?
Yes.
And who did that dispatching?
Which dispatcher dispatched it out? Samantha Diaz,
Samantha
I believe.
Diaz?
Yes.
Okay, relayed that information out to what agencies would receive that?
Uvalde Police Department.
Because it happened in the city of Uvalde.
That is correct.
Okay. And what agencies normally listen to the Uvalde Police Department channel?
That I wouldn't be able to be specific on.
Does the school district have their own channel?
No.
And so what channel are they assigned?
They could come in on either channel, which is the SO channel, the Sheriff's Office channel, or the Uvalde Police Department channel, whichever.
So just on their unit, they can turn it to either one of those channels and monitor that information.
Correct. Unless they're scanning, then they would come on either or.
Thank you. And so, did the dispatch office of the Uvalde Police Department receive a subpoena for phone calls, 911 calls, as well as dispatch from the period of 11/29 to 11/36/05?
Yes.
And did you help comply with that?
Yes.
And did you, in doing that, did you include all 911 calls
Yes.
that were recorded?
Yes.
And that would be all that came in
Yes.
and stamped with a time?
Correct.
And did you also comply by putting together all the dispatch, whether from a law enforcement agency to dispatch or from dispatch back to law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
And are each of those dispatch calls, are they fair and accurate representations of what happened?
Yes, sir.
And that's the whole purpose of making the recordings. Is that
Correct. Yes, sir.
Showing you State Exhibit 1039 and 1039A, does that appear to be the same kind of time increments that were on these dispatch calls that you provided as pursuant to the subpoena?
Yes, sir.
We'd also State's Exhibit 1039 and 1039A. That's just the... No. I thought I covered this. Let me cover it a little more carefully. As far as the dispatch times that are here, these are just the times the instrument placed on the dispatch times. Is that correct?
That's the time that the 911 recording, that's the format of it, yes.
And the format is to place it on there.
Correct.
But y'all didn't make any efforts to try to synchronize this with actual time. Is that correct?
I don't recall.
Okay. I guess what I mean is, did you just lift the information and provide it to the people that issued the subpoena?
Yes.
You didn't make, nor should you, make any attempts to synchronize the times so that they were actually accurate as to real time?
No.
With that addition, Your Honor, the state offers exhibits 1039 and 1039A.
What's the word? Objection, no objection?
Yeah, Your Honor, can we approach?
Not to synchronize the times, correct?
Correct.
It's to provide the information that your instruments provide you.
That is correct.
And if somebody else synchronized that time so that it was more accurate, you would have no objection to the accuracy that they provided. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you didn't review their work,
No.
so you're not trying to comment on it, but you just don't object if a synchronized time may be different from what the instrument actually placed on there.
Correct.
Is that sufficient?
Any objection?
In that case, Your Honor, we have no objection.
It's admitted.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Your witness, Mr. Hilliard.
Okay, nice. Sorry, Judge, thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Landry.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Good. My name's Gary Hilliard. We've
Counsel,
never met.
can you use a microphone?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Is that better?
Is it on?
Is that better? Okay. Ma'am, my name's Gary Hilliard. We haven't met before.
No.
No. You know, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
I'm one of the attorneys who represents Adrian, and I have your permission to ask you some questions.
Yes.
There are no trick questions, right? We just want to ask you about your experience and your experiences leading up to the events of May the 24th, 2022.
Okay.
Is that okay? All right. So I think you said that you were a dispatcher for 6 years. Is that correct?
About, yes, sir.
So approximately, and all of your experience has been with UPD, right? Uvalde Police Department.
Correct.
So you were a dispatcher for 6 years.
Yes.
So that means basically someone phones the police, you pick up the phone, take the call, you type something into the console that the prosecutor was talking about, right?
Correct.
Decide which unit or agency is appropriate,
Yes.
because sometimes people are calling for the fire department.
Yes.
You take those calls.
Correct.
Sometimes you need to send EMS.
Yes.
You take those calls.
Yes.
So you take the call, you notate it in your system,
Yes.
right? And then you will transmit it, probably with a device similar to this,
Correct.
over the radio by pressing a button,
Yes.
right, and activating the appropriate unit with a call sign.
Correct.
And that's called, is that radio protocol?
Yes.
So, and would it be correct to say that you wake the other unit up first? For example, you would say, I don't know, Uvalde 123 control or Uvalde something like that, right?
Correct.
And that would give that person, well, Uvalde 123, they're calling me,
Yes.
right, from Uvalde. And they would do the opposite.
Yes.
And that is how you know who you're dispatching, right?
Correct.
And they would acknowledge that call.
Yes.
So they would say received, control, something like that,
Yes.
according to a protocol in their training.
Correct.
And they use, and there's code words like 1050, right? Code number
Yes.
1050. That is for a traffic accident, right?
Yes.
And you hear, you know, people see it on the TV. People say like 10-4 to confirm that they've received it,
Yes.
right? Or received.
Yes.
You hear people say Roger, right?
Yes.
They don't know why. It's just something that's developed over time, right?
Yes.
To confirm that they've heard and received.
Correct.
And that's basically how that works. And I don't know how it is now, but at the time, so you did that for 6 years, sorry.
About, yes.
And then you promoted to become the supervisor.
Correct.
So would it be fair to say that being the supervisor in the dispatch, I want to call it the control room because you're in control of stuff, but in dispatch that means that you kind of got a back seat a little bit and you are watching your dispatchers and you will help when appropriate, right?
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Right, and so the prosecutor asked you about the dispatch room and the equipment, and I would imagine they're kind of desks like this where you've got a TV screen
Yes.
or a computer screen,
Mm-hmm.
right? But would it be fair to say that back in, at the time of this incident, in the dispatch, when you received 911 calls, they were received on a telephone?
Correct.
So, you know, it's not a cell phone, right? But
Right.
someone would phone emergency, whatever that is, and one of the dispatchers would pick up a telephone and speak into it, right?
Correct.
Because the reason I ask that is that can be going on. For example, you phone me and I'm the dispatcher, I'm talking to you on the telephone,
Yes.
right? I'm the call taker, right? You'd
Yes.
say that person is the call taker.
Yes.
I'm the call taker in a hypothetical. And let's say, for example, I need to transmit that to a unit on the ground. I'm also the dispatcher,
Correct.
right? So because, why ask in that case? Because on some of the 911s that the prosecutor just offered, you can hear like, how would you describe it? Like crossover, if you like. You can hear the phone call and you can hear someone being dispatched on the radio.
Correct.
Right? So sometimes it's confusing to the ear, right?
Yes.
And it must be confusing to you sometimes.
Yes, it can be.
But you've done it for a long time, so you've got so much experience, you can key into the voices.
Yes.
Right? But so when we listen to these calls, you're going to hear someone dialing 911 and the content of that call with the dispatcher taking it, the call taker taking it, and dispatching the units in the background.
Yes.
And then you can also hear sometimes the unit's response
Yes.
on the 911 call.
Correct.
So when the jury hears it, it gives them notice to listen. You're going to hear the response of the units on the ground.
Yes.
Because you'll hear, for example, you'll hear there is a 911 call that is in evidence, and I'm sure you've heard it from Miss Maureen. Are you aware of that one?
Possibly.
Yeah, one of the I think it's one of the ones on your. It's been put into evidence already. Yes. But you know, we have to acknowledge they're disturbing phone calls, right?
Yes.
And this must have been a very difficult day for you, right?
Yes.
And so I come from I promise you I come from a place of respect when I ask these questions, and none of it's a criticism, right? But
Yes.
it's a disturbing phone call, and it's very sad, but when you're hearing Miss Maureen talk, you can hear officers on the ground saying things, right?
Yes.
So, and it's awful, and you can hear Miss Maureen describing the incident. The jury has seen the video, but and when it happened at the time, we warned the jury, but you can hear Adrian transmitting things, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, because sorry, Jason, you worked in what year did you start there?
2009.
2009. So you worked and dispatched radio transmissions for Adrian for a while, right?
Yes.
Because he worked for Uvalde PD.
Correct.
And then he went over to the school police, right?
Yes.
So you recognise his voice.
Yes.
So I mean, we hear at least at one occasion when Miss Maureen says that the killer goes into the school. At the same time, you hear Adrian saying he's going around the west side of the building towards the school, right?
I believe so.
Remember that? Right. So at the time, there were no headphones in the control room or in the dispatch.
Correct.
Do you have them now?
No.
Still not now?
No.
Okay. And I wanted to talk to you very briefly about the timestamps on the, we say timestamps. So when someone makes a 911 call, the system automatically records it.
Correct.
Right. And when you make a dispatch, the system automatically records it.
Yes.
And that, you call that a timestamp.
Yes.
Right. And I believe that you said to the prosecutor they're somewhat accurate.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is that you don't set the time on that
No.
machine, right? That's done automatically.
Correct.
So you have no knowledge how that's done.
Correct.
Right, so sometimes they can be off. Right?
Yes.
That's the point I'm trying to get at. That's why Mr. Turner asked you those questions
Okay.
a minute ago. Now that is no fault of your own, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's just the way the computer and the system works.
Yes.
Right. So I want to talk to you about the radio transmissions that came in and the dispatch calls that came in on the day of this incident.
Okay.
Right, because you were interviewed a couple of times, right, as a result of this.
Yes.
You were interviewed by the Texas Rangers.
Yes.
Right, and they asked you about certain phone calls that you supervised, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then you were also interviewed later by Jesse Prado, right?
Yes.
And you'd agree the first interview was kind of short with the Texas Rangers?
Yes.
I think that was a telephone interview, right?
Correct.
And then you later spoke to Mr. Prado,
Yes.
right? And so you'd agree that, and again, have you been involved with critical incidents before?
Yes.
When I say a critical incident, what do you describe as a critical incident? Because you've been involved with them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How would you describe a critical incident?
I mean, it could vary, but suicide or just anything.
Would it be fair to say that it's multiple agencies, right?
Yes.
And lots of officers, right?
Yes.
And you have to coordinate a big response to an incident. That's also called a critical incident.
Yes.
Right, and you'd agree that, in your experience, right? Because you've done a lot, the prosecutor talked about your training and your experience. In a critical incident, the communications are an important piece,
Correct.
a vital piece of the response,
Yes.
right? And you're aware through your experience and being a supervisor in the dispatch that it is often communications that is highlighted, and it's nothing to do with you. I mean the systems globally that cause trouble with the operation itself.
Yes.
Right, and today, on that day, there were some issues with the communication piece as well, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Because, and by the way, the 911 calls that come in, remember I said the 911 calls in here, I'm the call taker, I take the 911 call, that doesn't necessarily get transmitted out to the officer directly, right?
No, it does.
Well, it does, but the phone call doesn't get patched into the radio and
no,
go out.
no, it does
So
not.
it would come in, for example, I'm the dispatcher, the phone call comes to me. Well, literally, it's not a game, it's like playing, you know what the telephone game is, right?
Right.
So the call, let's say in my hypothetical, a call comes into me, I take the phone call on the 911, and it's my interpretation of it that gets transmitted out.
Correct.
Right? The 911 call, the emergency call, doesn't get patched into the officers on the scene.
Correct.
So all the officers on the scene can go by is what is sent out to them by dispatch.
Correct.
So you'd agree that sometimes there is a disparity or a difference between what is coming into the dispatch room, the call taking function, and what goes out to the officers.
It could happen.
Yeah. And so, and one of the things that can be a problem with that is an open mic, right?
Yes.
Or a hot mic.
Yes.
Right. And because what we said is, I believe that there are, how many radio channels did you say were operating that day?
I mean, I believe all of my radio channels were going off at once, so if I had to guess, maybe I believe I have 12 on my radio console.
But if you have an open mic, that basically will cut across all the transmissions on that channel, right?
On that one channel, yes.
On that one channel.
Yes.
And what an open mic means, I guess, is now a radio is like a really fancy walkie-talkie, right?
Yes.
And if it's a handheld, sometimes they call it a brick, right?
Yes.
So if it's a handheld radio, it'll have people have seen a walkie-talkie, but it's like a kid's walkie-talkie. You press the button, you talk, right?
Yes.
It'll go, and then you talk.
Yes.
And that transmits. So you press the button, pause, then you transmit.
Correct.
Right. An open mic, or sometimes a hot mic, is where someone has pressed transmit on their radio.
Yes.
Right. And that means that no one else on that channel can talk.
Correct.
And that must be terribly frustrating for you.
Yes.
Right. And that can be for a variety of reasons. I guess police officers, we met one a minute ago, we've all seen them, wear a lot of equipment.
Yes.
And sometimes if they've got their radio attached to their belt, because they sometimes do if they're just using the brick, right?
Correct.
You can even lean and transmit.
Yes.
So what you would need to do is go on another channel, right, presumably, and say, units, you've got an open mic.
Yes.
Tell them.
Yes.
Right? Because that's if you can identify the radio.
Yes.
So you might, if I was one of your officers, you might be able to identify the radio that's associated with me. Right?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly. So you'd be able to go onto another channel and say, hey, if someone's near him, tell him he's got an open mic.
Yes.
Right. But in this incident, because so many people were coming, would it be fair to say it was one of the longest open mics you've ever experienced?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, this is not, and that's nothing to do with you, right?
No.
But this is just your experience in dispatch.
Yes.
So that means that that creates problems for you and your system sending messages out.
Yes.
And confirming whether or not they've been received.
Correct.
Right? Because you for example, you without, because the reason I asked you about the protocol for the radio, you call me and you wake my call sign up and I say received. That's the only way you know if I've received that communication or not.
Correct.
Right? Otherwise, you just don't know. Right?
Right.
You don't know when that was going to, and that happened a lot during this incident, right?
Yes.
You were trying to relay some very important information about some of the phone calls contained on the government's evidence, right?
Yes.
And you said throughout, you've been consistent throughout your interviews, think you said you tried and tried, and you kept trying to say, look, this is important, you need to know this. But there was an open microphone, so you never know who received it.
Correct.
Because normally you would say, whatever, you would say, Uvalde to all units, we're taking this phone call, and then you relay the information, right?
Yes.
And then you'd say, right, 1, 2, 3 received. So you'd know that 1, 2, 3, unit 1, 2, 3 has received that information.
Yes.
But on several occasions with some vital information that could have helped officers on the ground in this case, you could not confirm if anyone heard it.
Correct.
Right? Well, what we can confirm is at the beginning of this incident, it came in as I think you said there was a 911 call to a 1050. Is it 1050?
Yes.
And that's a traffic accident.
Yes.
And so that would be UPD, Uvalde PD's jurisdiction.
Yes.
In fact, you dispatched an officer to that, right?
Correct.
And that was Randy Hill, is that correct?
I don't remember.
If I represent to you that you dispatched a UPD officer called Randy Hill to that incident, would you have any reason to doubt it?
No.
No. Because that's his jurisdiction.
Correct.
Right, that's probably his patrol area.
Possibly.
Right? But you also know that Adrian volunteered to go.
Yes.
Remember that he broke, and when I say break, that means he went on his radio, pressed the button, transmit, said, I'm coming as well. Words to that effect.
Yes.
Right? So he volunteered to go to that call.
Believe so.
Yeah, and he didn't have to, right?
I mean, I guess I don't.
No, I mean, because the reason I say he didn't have to is because, he's going to a traffic accident, but that is someone else's jurisdiction. He could have, I don't know, just let someone else go and deal with it.
That's
Right.
true.
He
I see what
volunteered
they're
to
trying
go
to
to it.
prove here. Well, he's still got
Yes.
it to get an
But we know
initiative
it was on the
go
corner
without
of
being
Geraldine
dispatched.
and kind of Grove, but that's right on the edge of the jurisdiction of the school.
Correct.
And of course, Adrian has jurisdiction across the whole state of Texas, but that's specifically one of the places that he works, right?
Yes.
You have to say yes or no
Yes,
to
sorry.
that. And so, but he was nearby at the park with the high schoolers. Did you know that?
No.
And I say he, I mean Adrian. He volunteered to come. He came from the thing with the high schoolers, and he
That's
came
part because I guess they're giving
because
there's
you
some
would
high school
agree that
kids
there are
there
in this
and
area there have been
games
I think
and
it was
stuff for
you
the last.
heard evidence there were 50 bailouts between February and March as well, right?
Correct.
So this area, right?
Yes.
And
About.
of course you're involved in coordinating the efforts for that as well, right?
Correct.
So one of the reasons was that a lot of these bailouts have gone in or towards a school. Well, you know that.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so one of the reasons Adrian volunteered was to get to that scene to do that, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. And so I think we've spoken about the communication problems that we experienced on the day. Are you also aware that, would you agree that, or were you aware that sometimes there were communication problems at the school with radios not breaking?
The radio's not
Yes.
working.
And when I say radio's not breaking, that's almost like sometimes, let me draw an analogy or like an example, right? Sometimes you're in a building and you can't use your cell phone
Correct.
because you don't got signal.
Yes.
And it's the same as that.
Correct.
So you're aware that sometimes in that school, around the environment of that school, officers couldn't break, they couldn't transmit.
Not just in that school, but in all the schools, anybody.
In all the schools?
Yes.
All right, so in all the schools in Uvalde, sometimes officers couldn't transmit.
Correct.
So they would have to go outside
Yes.
to transmit,
Yes.
right? And that's a common practice.
Yes.
So if, I mean, I'm allowed to walk around, so if I was in the school and I wanted to transmit to the dispatch, I would have to go outside and then radio.
Yes.
Because I've got to get, for some reason, you've got to get away from the building in order to communicate with the dispatch,
Correct.
to give you vital information,
Yes.
and also to receive vital information.
Yes.
Because if I can't break, I can't receive.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. And then, were you also aware? Were you also aware that sometimes officers were dispatched via WhatsApp because of that problem?
I don't recall.
No.
long period of an open mic, is that correct?
Yes.
That was not within this first 5 or 6 minutes, though, that you provided as part of this subpoena, is that correct?
Correct.
So this open mic has nothing to do with the dispatches that you provided and we have just introduced into evidence.
Correct.
That's the way.
Very briefly, Judge, and about these open mics, so have you got a timestamp on any of the recordings for when their open mic starts?
Yes.
There is. But you also agree that and I think it was one of your colleagues said it was one of the longest open mics you'd ever seen or heard.
Correct.
Right, maybe up to 15 minutes.
Possibly.
Yeah, 15 minutes of cut across any radio transmissions.
Correct.
So, yeah, and this is 15, when we say 15 minutes, it doesn't sound like a long time, right?
No.
It's out 15 minutes, 15 minutes. But everyone can agree that in an incident like this, every second counts. Right?
Correct.
Every witness we speak to, we say every second counts.
Every second counts.
Right, so if an officer has to leave the building to break or transmit, that is time lost.
Yes.
And if an officer is in a position where they need to leave the building, that means they've gone into the building, right?
Yes.
Kind of logically.
Yes.
If I've gone into the building and I can't break, I need to leave in order to call for backup,
Yes.
right? I would need to leave in order to call for SWAT,
Yes.
like Adrian did, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I've just got a couple more questions, Ms. Landry. So, am I right in saying your husband is Officer Landry from UPD?
Yes.
And he did you dispatch him to Rob that day?
Not specifically.
Did dispatch your dispatch that you were supervising dispatch him?
Not specifically.
Okay. Well, ma'am, I honestly, respectfully, thank you so much for your efforts, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Okay, is she excused, not subject to recall?
Yes, sir. And no. So she can be released, Judge.
Okay. All right, you are released from the subpoena and you are not subject to recall. Thank you very much. You can take off. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're a matter we're going to take up outside the presence, and I don't want you to hang around, so we're going to go ahead and release you for today. We'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Please remember my instructions, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9. Would everyone rise for the jury, and if you get that witness, please.
Okay, the judge has sent the jury home for the day. And it sounds like they were just trying to get her testimony in to understand what they will hear when they do hear these 911 calls.
Right, because he said that there was background noise.
Right.
And that there was problems with communication in the school. So I think that's just what they wanted to get the 911 operator to explain to the jury in advance.
Okay, so I don't think court is actually done for
Yeah,
the
they're
day.
still taking
The judge said they were going to take up something outside the presence of the jury, and of course we don't really know what that is at this point. But we're waiting to see. We're looking on the to see the judge.
He's swearing somebody in.
Okay, he's swearing someone in.
I do.
Have a seat over here. They're conferring, and we'll get to you in a minute.
Yeah, he let the jury
He let
go.
the jury go, but they're taking up something outside the presence. Are our mics off?
So the issue is kind of like, we want to that's
Fiat, if you do those Starbucks runs, you need to bring enough for the class. Yes, Your Honor. We're not going to finish you today, sir, so I'll just advise you, you know about this already. The rule has been invoked, so when you're released today, don't talk to anybody about the case other than lawyers until you know the case is over.
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor, I think we've been able to reduce it, so, but I do have a few questions.
All right, go ahead. He's been sworn.
Are you still Sergeant Coronado?
I am no longer Sergeant Coronado. I retired, so I'm no longer employed with Uvalde PD.
And the question I have for you, on May 24, 2022, did you have a body cam?
I did, yes, sir.
Can you tell us how that got started and what caused the body cam to start?
I can give you a pretty long explanation if you'd like. I can kind of explain to you why the body cam was activated when it was.
That's kind of what the question is.
Yes, sir. So initially, when I first got to the scene, immediately we were receiving what we thought was receiving gunfire. So usually what happens is we're aware that there's limited battery on the body cam, so we try to activate it once getting there. But given the circumstances and type of call that we received, that was something that was in the back of my head. I hadn't thought about it as we were responding. So it wasn't until, as I said, when I got even close to the scene, I hadn't even fully arrived on scene. When I got close to the scene is whenever I drove to the other two officers that were already there, and at that point received gunfire. And so at that point, that's when I repositioned myself, and I guess I can testify to that tomorrow, but I repositioned myself, and it wasn't until I got on campus and was running down that I activated my body camera.
And how do you activate your body camera?
You have to actually activate it by pushing a button.
And that's what you did?
Yes, sir.
When you were already drove to the other side of campus and had run down the hall, down the hall?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that accurately depicted in your body camera?
I believe,
When
yes,
it
sir.
starts?
Yes, sir.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of when you activated your body camera?
I say that only because, so there's triggers that when you activate it, I believe the video immediately turns on, but the audio doesn't immediately turn on, I think. So it depends on how you program it and how the administration prepares it. So I want to say that the video immediately turns on, but the audio doesn't turn on, I think. It could be, it's been close to 4 years now.
But your operation is simply pushing a button?
Correct, yes, sir.
Pass the witness.
Thank you. Hey, Sergeant Coronado, this is like not really even, it's not a whole lot about you. We're just trying to figure out when your body cam started.
Yes.
And I'll just tell you, because we have another officer that was away from you, and his apparently has started at the exact same time. So we want to just try to understand from you, have you reviewed your body cam footage like in where it started with the prosecutor?
So I have reviewed it, which is to say I've looked at it. I haven't gone into great detail about time and things like that. I know that it had been some time after the fact that I had reviewed it, but as far as getting accurate times and being able to go over details as that, I never truly investigated that part of it. What I did see, though, and what I do understand is that, yes, while I was running down the breezeway is when I activated my camera.
And is that in your mind and in your memory? Is that what you remember doing, is activating
Yes.
as you were doing that?
Yes, sir.
So when you were at Geraldine and Grove, your memory is that you did nothing to trigger an activation. And I'm not blaming
Correct.
you. You thought you were taking fire and there was other
Correct.
stuff going on.
Yes, sir.
We just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some body camera footage out there that we never received.
Right, yes, sir. No, sir, that's
Okay, so-
correct.
So in your memory, where the body camera turned on is where you remember turning it.
Unless that thing activated and turned on and then turned back off, I do distinctly remember, because it's a habit. Even when it's on, you have a tendency as you're on a scene to just hit it and double check that it's working. You understand what I'm saying? Because the position of it. Now, has it accidentally been turned on and off? That has happened before in the past, and that's kind of why, I mean, you just instinctively just try to make sure that thing is on. But I do have a memory and of me turning it on as I was running down the breezeway that day. I don't remember, I don't think that there's any other body cam footage that was mine that day.
Okay, and so with any kind of issue maybe with Mendoza turning it on at the exact same time, we would have to go talk to Mendoza and ask
Yeah,
him.
that's news to me. Yeah, I have no idea anything about that, sir.
Okay, and you were not with Mendoza at the time when you activated your body cam?
Now, can you clarify which Mendoza, because I had two Mendozas at that day.
Jesus.
Jesus, also known as Blue, we call him Blue, but yes, sir. So again, I'm gonna have to clarify with you. When I first got there at the scene, when I was explaining to you earlier, I was there with him.
Right.
Does that make sense?
At Geraldine and Grove.
Geraldine and Grove, yes, sir.
That's right. And that's why we're trying to, because in our mind, we have two officers with body cam, none of the camera footage from Geraldine and Grove, and both are activated at the same time at a different spot.
Body cam footage.
Yes.
Yes, there was dash cam footage, I believe, that showed that I arrived on scene.
And we do have that. It's the body cam, and because the dash cam footage does not record audio.
No, that dash cam did not.
So, okay, so that, basically, that kind of covers, to me, in my mind, and I'll pass it back over if you have any other questions.
That's all I have.
Yeah, in my mind, Judge, that's what we're trying to do is, as you can see, we have officers that are there, no body cam footage, two body cameras there. They leave each other, they separate, and both turn on at the same time, separated away from the corner. So we've kind of solved the first half. He's testified to what he's testified to, and then we would like an opportunity to talk to Mendoza to see and make sure that there wasn't any, any kind of other issue. And we're going to get an opportunity maybe to talk to him tonight. And so
We're going to try to make him available to the defense tonight.
Right.
Okay, but you're done for the day. I've already advised you about the rules, so
Yes,
we'll
sir.
see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I don't know if y'all need him, but he's done for today as far as I'm concerned. Okay, we'll be in recess till 9 a.m. tomorrow with the jury.
Thank you, Judge.